Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Aisling Murphy. Aisling Murphy, born in 1998, was the youngest of three siblings. Her family lived in Blue Ball, Ireland, a peaceful town about an hour's drive from Dublin. Aisling grew up in a loving environment, influenced by her father's passion for music, particularly the bagpipes and violin. Inspired by him, she began studying traditional Irish music. She joined a youth choir in school and later became part of an orchestra, performing folk music at various events across Ireland and Great Britain. She was talented, independent, and sociable, which allowed her to integrate well with her team and feel comfortable on stage. After graduating from school, Aisling quickly sought employment. She was determined to achieve complete independence from her parents, so she began searching for full-time job opportunities right after receiving her diploma. Despite her career ambitions, she continued to nurture her love for music. She often performed for her relatives during special family gatherings on weekends, which further strengthened their connections. Aisling wanted to create her own family someday, but first, she focused on establishing herself. She went to college and became a first-grade teacher at a school where she had previously studied. This moment in her life was very meaningful. The teachers and students appreciated Aisling for her energy, kindness, and creativity. Aisling was truly suited for this role due to her strong moral character. She made a smooth transition from being an excellent student to becoming a wonderful teacher. Aisling was friendly, well-mannered, sweet, and self-assured. During her first week of work, she taught music on weekends, showing her passion for her job and her enjoyment of working with children. At 28, she had been in a relationship with her boyfriend, Ryan, for over 6 years. They met when Aisling was just 15. Initially, their romance didn't last, and they broke up after a few months. However, they eventually reunited, realizing that they were too young when they first started dating as teenagers. Their feelings for each other reignited, and they fell deeply in love, often talking about their future, including marriage and children. They had planned a trip in 2 days, but unfortunately, it seemed their dreams would not come to fruition. Aisling finished her workday and planned to go for a run along the Grand Canal in Tullamore. This was a routine activity for her, as she enjoyed fitness and outdoor recreation. She loved walking or running in beautiful locations, so she often visited the canal when she could. The Grand Canal was a popular spot for runners, featuring a designated path for walking. It was usually busy, which made Aisling comfortable going there alone. After work, Aisling got ready for her run. She first went home to change her clothes and tell her mother about her schedule. Her mother reassured her daughter that she was old enough to take care of herself and that there was no danger in this. Aisling left, and that was the last time her mother saw her alive. About an hour after Aisling left home, 2 runners warming up along the Grand Canal called for help. They were running on one side of the canal and saw a man attacking a girl on the opposite bank. Since they didn't have mobile phones, they ran to the nearest payphone to report the incident. They informed the emergency dispatcher that they had witnessed a threatening man assaulting one of the female runners. The witnesses confirmed that the victim was still alive when the attacker dragged her into the bushes. She screamed and fought back, desperately trying to push him away, but she was clearly outmatched. The dispatchers sent police officers to the specified location. Upon arrival, the police and a witness found the body of a young woman at the canal. The young girl, who showed no signs of life, was found to have been severely beaten, as the caller had reported. She had been pulled off the paved road and into the bushes, where she suffered physical abuse. Her face and neck were covered in cuts, and her hair was matted with dried blood. Paramedics arrived and attempted to resuscitate her for 10 minutes, but they were unable to save her and confirmed her death. While the exact cause of death remained unclear, it was evident she had been beaten badly. The body of the murdered girl was sent for an autopsy, which revealed stab and cut wounds on her neck. A forensic expert identified 11 injuries, primarily on the right side of her neck, including a cut throat that rendered her unable to call for help. Signs of possible strangulation were also found. The victim was identified as Aisling Murphy. On her hands, there were deep cuts, likely sustained during a struggle. Keys were discovered near her body, and it was determined she had used them defensively, gripping them tightly in an effort to fight off her attacker. The weapon used in the attack did not inflict enough damage to prevent the criminal from continuing his assault. Aisling died from severe blood loss caused by multiple stab wounds to her neck, leading to her death within minutes. Near her body, police found sunglasses and a mobile phone in her jacket pocket. An abandoned bicycle was also found nearby, likely belonging to the attacker. The criminal had already fled the scene after harming his innocent victim. The brutality of the attack was shocking, especially since it occurred in broad daylight in a crowded area with witnesses. 2 runners who were in the vicinity witnessed the crime. They observed both the attack and the assailant. They provided vital information to the police. The first witness, Emma, reported that she was walking her dog by the Grand Canal when she noticed a girl jogging. She saw a man on a bright green bicycle closely following the jogger. Initially, Emma thought they might be running together because the cyclist stayed so close to the girl. She described the cyclist as looking like a migrant, not Irish. He had yellowish skin, a short haircut, and was wearing a black tracksuit with red logos. Later, Emma met another witness, Jenna, and together they witnessed the cyclist attack the girl. The attack appeared sudden and unprovoked. Jenna witnessed the attack and provided a detailed account. Her description matched that of another witness, who reported that the victim screamed, threatening the attacker, but then suddenly fell silent. This silence was caused by a wound to Aisling's neck that severely severed her vocal cords. Later, Jenna screamed loudly, threatening to call the police. Despite the threats, the attacker did not let go of the victim. Police found a green bicycle near the trail that belonged to the attacker. Meanwhile, police gathered more evidence and discovered that Aisling had been wearing a fitness tracker while running. The device recorded her body metrics, including speed, distance, and heart rate, helping to clarify the details surrounding her death. The data showed that Aisling started running at 2:51 p.m., and before that, GPS records showed she had parked her bike near the canal. After that, her pulse was around 100 beats per minute, indicating she was in an active phase. She maintained this heart rate until 15:21, during which she ran approximately 3 kilometers. However, after 15:21, her heart rate changed. The Aisling experienced erratic fluctuations, and GPS data showed she was standing still at that time. This was clearly when she was attacked, and by 15:31, her heart had stopped beating. The next step for the police was to review footage from surveillance cameras in the area. Police identified the locations of all recording devices, hoping to find video that would show the suspect, the victim, and the attack itself. Police checked surveillance cameras, focusing on the time frame between 12:25 and 16:05, and were able to identify a man who matched the witness description exactly. It appeared that he was moving randomly along the roads. They determined that this man had appeared long before Aisling's arrival and was using a bicycle identical to the one found at the crime scene. The prime suspect was wearing a black hoodless jacket and sweatpants with stripes down the side, and also had a red logo on his clothes, as Emma described. He had been following a woman in a dark burgundy jacket but was later spotted by her. He had been looking at the victim with interest, but for some unknown reason he quickly fell behind. In footage from another camera, the suspect stops at 1:53 p.m. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out an object. He is seen holding and twisting something in his hand, but the poor quality of the footage makes it difficult to determine what it is. Police suspect he pulled out a knife, which he then used to kill Aisling. A forensic expert concluded that Aisling was killed with a small serrated knife, as the wounds had jagged edges. The man was seen again on surveillance footage at around 2:55 p.m., just as Aisling began training on the trail. Police discovered that the suspect had been wandering around the area, apparently looking for victims, as he occasionally focused on different women. He followed these women at a distance but lost interest until he came across Aisling, whom he decided to attack. Unfortunately, the surveillance cameras did not capture high-quality images that could help identify the criminal. Hours after the attack, a suspect was arrested based on information from witnesses. The suspect, Griot Keegan, is a 39-year-old Romanian immigrant who has lived in Ireland for 23 years and has no criminal record. He matched the person seen on surveillance cameras and found near the scene of the attack. At the police station, he vehemently denied any involvement in the incident. While police were questioning him, police obtained a search warrant and thoroughly searched his house, but found no evidence of his guilt. Griot maintained that there had been a mistake. He provided an alibi that was verified. He had been in a store making a purchase, which was confirmed by his receipt and surveillance footage. After that, he was seen walking along the south bank of the canal while the murder occurred on the north bank. The suspect's fingerprints and DNA samples were collected to compare with skin particles found under the Aisling's nails and on the bicycle, but there was no match. This confirmed that he was not involved in the crime. He was cleared of all suspicions and released. However, for some time, he and his family received threats as local residents still viewed him as a murderer. He was temporarily provided with alternative housing, and the police issued a public statement clarifying that Griot was not connected to the crime. Only after this did the public stop harassing him. This case received wide publicity across the country. The local community was outraged by the attack on Aisling and called on the police to quickly identify and arrest the perpetrators responsible for the tragic death of a talented young woman in broad daylight. For days, police have been trying to piece together clues, and the situation has taken a surprising turn. On the evening following the attack, a 30-year-old man named Josef Puska was admitted to a hospital in Dublin with abdominal injuries. Josef was originally from a small village in Slovakia. He left school at 16 without finishing his education and spent most of his life working as a laborer in the Czech Republic. Although he faced challenges in his lifestyle and at school, Josef was not involved with bad influences, had no criminal record, and was generally seen as a positive individual. In 2015, he moved to Dublin, Ireland, where he and his wife planned to settle permanently. He continued his work as a builder, and during their time there, they welcomed 5 children. Everything seemed to be going well until he suffered a back injury at work. After his recovery, Josef found that he could not return to his previous activities. The back injury was more severe than he had anticipated, leading him to receive disability benefits. He spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, and afterward, he relied on state support. The financial situation was tight, so his wife had to work. Josef had limited proficiency in Irish and struggled with English, which made it difficult for him to communicate with medical staff. When he went to the hospital the day after Aisling's murder, he needed an interpreter for assistance. Thanks to the interpreter, Josef explained that he was in Blanchardstown the previous day, January 12th. He took a taxi there and noticed he was being followed as soon as he arrived, but he did not think much of it since it was daytime. Suddenly, the attackers assaulted him, stabbing him multiple times in the stomach before they ran away. He managed to get home, where he informed his family about the incident and called for an ambulance. Doctors discovered cuts on Josef's hands, signs of defensive wounds. He had multiple stab wounds in his abdomen and received painkillers before a 2-hour surgery. The surgery was completed around 10 o'clock. The doctors concluded that Yosef's injuries were from stab wounds inflicted by a small knife, but they were not life-threatening. He remained in the hospital for several days to recover. As part of their protocol, the doctors informed the police about the incident. Officers came to speak with Yosef, who was the victim of another attack. Police suspected that the same criminal who attacked Aisling might also be responsible for Yosef's injuries. During the conversation, Yosef's behavior became increasingly awkward and suspicious. He seemed confused, struggled to recall simple details, and appeared noticeably nervous. Police began to question whether this unemployed man could be connected to Aisling's murder. The next day, the police returned to the hospital to continue questioning and gather more details. This time, Yosef gave more specific answers. He explained that he had taken a taxi to the city to meet a woman he had met online. Yosef then revealed that he was married with 5 children but did not want his wife to know about his secret encounters. It was later discovered that he had registered on several dating websites and was regularly seeing different women. His wife remained unaware of his affair, as Yosef was very careful to keep it a secret. The police asked Yosef if he owned a bicycle. He replied that he had a green bicycle that he had used for a long time. However, when they inquired whether he had been riding it on the day of the murder, Yosef started to stutter and claimed that his bicycle had been stolen over 2 weeks ago. He had not reported the theft to the police, which raised suspicions. Yosef then appeared increasingly anxious, prompting police to leave his hospital room. The police also discovered that he had been near the canal around 6 p.m. that same day. They obtained a warrant to search his apartment, allowing them to collect his clothing and mobile phone for forensic analysis. They called Yosef to inform him of this. Sensing something was amiss, he directly asked the police, through an interpreter, if he was a suspect. The officers reassured him that they were merely trying to clarify the situation and needed to conduct an examination. This conversation occurred over the phone. After the police answered, the Yosef paused for a long moment. Then he turned to the translator and asked him to accurately relay his words to the police officer. Yosef admitted that he had killed the girl by the canal, but he insisted that it was unintentional and an accident. Later, the Yosef addressed the police directly. He explained that he was riding his bicycle along a path when he encountered an unfamiliar girl. He had a knife in his hand and accidentally cut her in the neck after losing his balance. She became angry, which frightened Yosef, and he claimed he struck her in the stomach with an object that resembled a knife. He said he tried to remain calm, hoping the girl would settle down. However, she began screaming and threatening him even more, forcing Yosef to defend himself. He then attacked her, repeatedly stabbing her in the neck with his knife. She fought back desperately, but he was able to overpower her. The police were taken aback by his phone confession, finding the story hard to believe. It seemed implausible that Yosef could accidentally stab the victim in the neck before she attacked him. They questioned how Aisling could have had a knife. Yosef expressed fear of retaliation. He believed that if Aisling's friends and relatives learned of the incident, they might harm his children and wife. He asked the police to keep the names of his family members confidential. The police assured Yosef that he would not face prosecution as he would soon be arrested and put on trial. After being discharged from hospital, he was immediately arrested for murder. Afterward, the Yosef changed his story and refused to confess. Despite this, the prosecutor's office viewed him as the only person who could have harmed Aisling that day. They decided to seek the maximum punishment for the murderer. The initial trial date was set for June 2023, but there were several delays, and it wasn't until October 2023 that the prosecution presented the case to the jury. During the trial, prosecutors played surveillance footage showing an attacker who looked like Yosef cycling along a path near the canal for hours before targeting Aisling. His actions were typical of a predator looking for prey. Forensic experts found traces of DNA under Ashling's fingernails, suggesting she fought back and injured her attacker. DNA from tissue samples matched Joseph, and his fingerprints were found on a green bicycle. All witnesses who saw the attacker that day identified him as Joseph. New evidence emerged during the investigation, particularly from one of Josef's friends, a Slovakian bus driver. On the night of January 12, while working, he encountered Joseph, who had severe scratches on his stomach. Concerned, the driver offered Joseph a ride home. Joseph mentioned he had gotten into a fight but did not provide details about the incident. During the drive, the bus driver repeatedly questioned Joseph about what had happened, but Joseph avoided giving clear answers and kept holding his stomach, which was bleeding. The driver grew increasingly worried, suspecting that the injuries might be linked to the ethnic cleansing events happening at that time, as there were widespread expressions of hatred against other nationalities. To deflect his friend's questions, Joseph concocted a story about being attacked by a masked man, claiming he couldn't identify the attacker because he hadn't seen his face before and didn't know him. Joseph attempted to portray himself as a hero, claiming he had seen a masked stranger attacking a woman near the canal. Joseph claimed he was stabbed multiple times as he tried to approach the bleeding girl. He became frightened when he realized what had happened and then fled. Despite being suspected of murder, he began to insist that he was actually the savior, having been injured in a fight with the real attacker. However, this new account does not clarify how his DNA was found under Ashling's fingernails or his fingerprints on the green bike he left behind. Joseph's defense argued that his false confession about the attack on Ashling resulted from the painkillers he received in the hospital, which caused him to feel euphoric and led him to speak to himself. Joseph stated that he was under the influence of these drugs when the police began their interrogation. However, doctors who treated Joseph contradicted this claim. They stated that he only received a minimal dose of the medication, meaning it could not have significantly affected him by the time he made his confession. The prosecution highlighted that Joseph had changed his testimony multiple times, making his statements unreliable. However, this posed a challenge for the prosecution because Joseph had no history of violence, especially against women. There were no indications of aggression or cruelty in his behavior, and he had no connection to Ashling, raising questions about his motive for the attack. The prosecution argued that the incident was not a result of personal issues. The trial lasted 3 weeks, after which a jury of 12 members returned their verdict. They deliberated for 3 hours before finding Joseph Puska guilty of the murder of Ashling Murphy. As a result, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The circumstances surrounding Ashling's murder shocked the nation. Just days after the tragedy, protests were held across Ireland in support of the victim's family, and the case shocked the nation. During the investigation, police determined that Joseph had attacked Ashling without any apparent motive. He did not know her. He appeared to be a predator who had been searching for a victim for hours. Unfortunately, Ashling fell victim to a monster. The Inman family projected an image of perfect harmony to those on the outside. They were regular churchgoers every Sunday to Warwoodportsing. Yet within their tight-knit circle one could fathom what really happened behind closed doors. Back in 3, William and Sandra Inman's paths crossed at church. He was 18, she just 16. Their union received their parents' blessing, leading to marriage. The couple made their home in the modest community of Logan, located in Hawking County, Ohio. Bill Inman possessed strong religious convictions and balanced his job in construction with playing musical instruments for the Sky of Faith Evangelical Church in Nelsonville, Ohio. Sandra took on the role of managing the household. In 1984, they were delighted to welcome their son, William Jr. To distinguish between father and son, the head of the family was called Bill, while the younger one was known as Will. As time passed, William Jr. grew up. At age 17, in 2001, he met a 15-year-old named Summer Cook at church, quite reminiscent of his parents' encounter. Will and Summer maintained a friendship for 3 years before getting married when Summer turned 18 in 2004. The newlyweds began their life together by residing with Will's parents in a spacious house in Logan, Ohio. In that same year, when Bill reached the age of 39, he envisioned himself as a spiritual guide. Transforming his garage into a makeshift sanctuary, he began hosting gatherings there. Despite local skepticism towards this self-declared minister's actions, his enigmatic garage started to attract neighbors first, then their friends, and more individuals seeking solace through prayer and leaving offerings. By 2005, Will and Summer were overjoyed with the birth of their son Alex. Around this time, financial strains began affecting the Inman household, since Bill's religious endeavors were not financially rewarding. This situation led the family to consider relocating to another state in pursuit of better employment opportunities. By 2006, the Inman family had fully resettled in Florida. Both Bill and Will promptly secured employment in hotel construction. Meanwhile, Sandra and Summer dedicated themselves to homemaking and nurturing young Alex. 2 years later, the Inmans made their way back to Ohio from Florida. By then, they had forfeited their Logan home due to an inability to reclaim it, and settled in a rental in Vinton's countryside. Starting a new chapter shortly after their relocation, in 2008, Will and Summer welcomed their second child, a daughter named Kelly. By 2010, their family grew with the arrival of another daughter, Alana. As young parents, Will and Summer often sought weekends away for relaxation and rejuvenation. During these times, Bill and Sandra, always supportive, took on the role of caring for their grandchildren. The weekends were filled with joy as they cherished moments with their 3 grandchildren. In the spring of 2010, Bill Inman secured a pastor's license and proclaimed himself the head of the Skinnier Faith Church. Alongside his wife, he established a charitable entity named Ranch of Mercy to assist the jobless and homeless. His vision was grand. He wanted to construct a large dwelling for orphans and widows. However, financial resources were quite lacking. To address this issue, Bill conceived a lottery scheme. Each participant would purchase a ticket with proceeds earmarked for building the shelter. The grand prize was either a house or $200,000 plus 99 other significant rewards. The community became aware of this lottery through news and advertisements. Bill initially promoted it door to door, assuring participants of lavish rewards, while emphasizing that surplus funds were destined for providing a haven for the destitute. Priced at $10 per ticket, Bill managed to sell 100,000 tickets, amassing $1 million for the project. The drawing was set for September 2010. In June 2010, personal upheaval struck the Inman family when Summer expressed her desire to divorce Will after 6 years of marriage. This declaration came not long after she had penned a significant entry in her personal diary. "I am utterly exhausted from constantly trying to please everyone around me. Do not deserve happiness. Do I not have the right to love someone and feel that love in return? I'm uncertain if now is the appropriate time, but I feel compelled to share everything with Will. It troubles me deeply, yet he deserves to know the truth. He should be aware that I no longer wish to be with him. I need to be alone to rediscover myself and understand my current identity. At this moment, I feel like a servant, perpetually running around and obeying others' commands. I adore my children with all my heart and would never trade them for anything. However, I don't want them to grow up witnessing their mother merely following orders all the time. I'm unsure how Will might react to this revelation. There's a chance he could become angry, attempt to take the children away, or worse, resort to threats or harm. It's important for our children to see us as equals. I'm aware that Will's parents might turn against me and try to convince me to stay, but such actions won't change anything." Last night, when Will asked me what I wanted, my mind was blank. All I could think of was what I don't want. I don't want to feel unhappy and trapped any longer, but I couldn't bring myself to voice these thoughts. So instead, I sat there in silence. Every day feels like a battle. All I yearn for is rest, to cry and sleep without interruption. but finding a way out of this situation seems impossible at times. My hope is that by the time of my next journal entry, I'll have clarity on how to resolve everything. As the summer progressed, we moved forward with the divorce proceedings. Departing from the Inman residence, I took our son and both daughters along with my personal belongings. We sought refuge at my parents' home. Wanting not to disrupt the children's relationship with their father or grandparents, visits were scheduled regularly for them. 2 months following our separation in August 2010, I began a relationship with Adam Peters while also securing employment at a bank in Logan's downtown area, working in a cleaning capacity due to limited educational background. When September arrived, it marked another significant event, the Ranch of Mercy's house raffle, spearheaded by the Inman family. Although construction on the prize house was supposed to begin, both September and October passed without any progress. No raffle took place, and no explanations were given. The organization didn't seem to rush to refund participants either. By December 1, 2010, the Inmans got a notice requiring them to leave their rented residence due to significant unpaid rent. In response, Summer and Adam went to collect her remaining belongings from the Inman home. However, they were denied entry. This led Summer to call the police, reporting that her estranged husband was intimidating her and preventing her from retrieving her possessions. When the police arrived, Will and his parents continued to block access. Will even escalated matters by threatening Adam and clashing with an officer. Consequently, Summer filed a legal complaint against Will. She reflected on their relationship, recalling how idyllic it seemed before marriage, but lamenting its drastic change afterward. Will's behavior reportedly became very controlling, affecting everything from her diet to household responsibilities and even intimate aspects of their life. She wasn't allowed to sleep without his approval and was confined at home without access to her phone or keys. Summer revealed Will's aspirations for a large family, his interest in polygamy, and his activities on related websites, including posting inappropriate images. She also disclosed threats he made if she pursued divorce and mentioned how her cats mysteriously disappeared. Will attributed their disappearance nonchalantly to them escaping through an open window. Following Summer's allegations, Will provided his version of events. He justified taking Summer's phone and keys by suggesting he suspected her of infidelity. Regarding the cats, he said that due to their wild behavior and damage caused to furniture and family members, he relocated them to a shelter. As a result of these conflicts and accusations, Will was subjected to a restraining order, preventing him from approaching Summer, and faced penalties and probation amidst further investigations. A fierce battle for custody emerged between the families. The Inmans filed police report against Adam Peters, labeling him a potential threat to the safety of Alex, Kelly, and Alana. Tragically, Summer's life took a dark turn. On the night March 22, 2011, Summerman, just 25 years old, was finishing her shift at the bank. She wrapped up her cleaning duties after the office had closed. Around 11 p.m., she stepped outside to dispose of the trash. Summer had texted her partner Adam to meet her after work, but he didn't find her by 11:30 p.m. Worried, Adam arrived at the bank and began his search. He discovered her personal items scattered near a dumpster in an alley, her phone, keys, and a music player still playing with headphones nearby in the grass. Her jacket lay there too. Alarmed, Adam immediately contacted Summer's parents to inform them of her disappearance and stressed the need to alert the police swiftly. Initially, Summer's parents called the bank, guessing she might have stayed longer for extra work and misplaced her belongings. Security personnel had no clues about her whereabouts. They then contacted Logan police to report Summer missing, emphasizing her punctuality and that she rarely stayed late at work. Police arrived at the scene, where they found Summer's belongings. They heard accounts from 3 eyewitnesses who saw her abduction about an hour earlier. 2 women out for an evening jog reported seeing Summer as she threw out the trash. At that moment, a white Ford Crown Victoria, driven by a blonde woman, approached. 2 individuals dressed in black balaclavas exited the vehicle. and forcefully grabbed Summer, shoving her into the back seat despite her resistance and cries for help. One bystander's attempt to intervene was thwarted when the female driver incapacitated him with pepper spray, forcing him to retreat. The car quickly left the area. The two jogging witnesses immediately headed to the nearest police station to report what they had witnessed. Their account initially faced skepticism from the police, who found their narrative peculiar and doubted its authenticity. Expecting it might be a fabricated story, the police reached the abduction site of Summer Inman just an hour after her parents filed the missing person report. However, initial efforts did not lead to locating the missing 25-year-old. News of Summerman's kidnapping quickly circulated through all local media outlets, capturing the community's attention. Hundreds of Logan's residents united in a concerted effort to locate her. As 3 days elapsed, the possibility of finding Summer safe and sound grew increasingly faint. Throughout this harrowing time, her parents endeavored to maintain hope against despairing thoughts. Shortly before her disappearance, Summer Inman shared a photo on Facebook featuring herself, her new partner Adam, and her children. The image portrayed them as a content family unit. Will Inman, who had access to Adam Peters' Facebook page, surprisingly still on his friends list despite being Summer's current partner, noticed this update. It raises an intriguing question. Why would a husband befriend his wife's new companion? The backstory revealed that Adam, a man without stable employment, had been hired by the Inmans a year earlier, in spring 2010, for various household tasks. It was then that Adam and Summer crossed paths and developed a bond. Despite initial reluctance, Summer eventually reciprocated Adam's affections. Her diary entry reflects this internal conflict. When I looked into his eyes, I realized that the devil had taken over me. I didn't listen to what God was telling me. I tried to stop. My mind screamed, "Run, get out of here now." But instead, I stayed and let him embrace me and then delve deeper. I am very sorry about this. I am guilty. This encounter signified the unraveling of Summer's life within the Inman family. Yearning for happiness and love, she initiated divorce proceedings which were prolonged 5 days before vanishing. Will tested the proposed spousal support per child monthly, suggesting a reduction to $50 given his annual earnings of just $6,000. Will and his parents sought full custody of the children, but their petition was rejected by the court. After losing contact with their grandchildren, Bill and Sandra visibly deteriorated. They lost weight and were clearly affected, as those who knew them concurred that the grandchildren were the light of their lives. In March 2011, amidst the investigation into Summer's disappearance, the Inman family was located. They were found at the residence of Bill's 70-year-old mother in Jackson, Ohio. Bill, Sandra, and Will collectively asserted their ignorance regarding Summer's abduction. The Inmans recounted that on the night of Summer's kidnapping, they were en route to Cleveland to view a new property. However, they encountered car trouble after 3 hours on the road, leading to an overnight ordeal of vehicular repairs on the roadside before returning to Logan the next morning. They maintained that their interactions with Summer were generally amicable, with infrequent disputes. Yet they attributed a shift in their familial harmony to Adam Peters' employment in their household, describing this phase as challenging. The trio consistently portrayed Adam as a negative influence, alleging he was the catalyst for the disintegration of their previously harmonious and tightly knit family. The investigation took a crucial turn when police noticed a white Ford Crown Victoria at the Inman family's residence. Upon inspection of the vehicle, a GPS receiver was confiscated. Subsequent examination revealed that on March 22nd, the day Summer was abducted, this car was in Logan. The GPS was deactivated at 5:30 p.m. that evening and reactivated the next morning again in Logan, contradicting the Inman's claim of traveling to Cleveland. Phone records further corroborated that all 3 family members were in Logan on both March 22nd and 23rd. Additional inquiries revealed that on the morning of March 23rd, around 7:30 a.m., the Inmans were at a car wash engaging in a thorough interior cleaning of the vehicle. Bill, Sandra and Will were all present, but Summer was notably absent following this event. They visited an auto shop in Cleveland for a tire change. While there, a shop employee noticed something odd. Bill was choosing to replace nearly new tires with used ones, simply because he didn't like his current set chained. There was also evidence that the Inmans attempted to modify the car's appearance. Notably, Bill had removed a police spotlight that had previously been mounted on the driver's side door next to the mirror. Bill, Sandra, and Will Inman were apprehended and brought in for interrogation. Prior to their arrest, Bill assured his elderly mother of their innocence, attributing the situation to a test from the devil. Throughout the questioning, they consistently claimed they were unaware of Summer Inman's abduction and didn't know who the kidnapper was. However, after several hours and faced with the possibility of capital punishment if convicted, Sandra Inman's resolve faltered. Eventually, she disclosed the truth. Sandra confessed that they were responsible for Summer's abduction on the night of March 22nd. She detailed how Bill and Will had disguised themselves in black masks. Sandra admitted that her initial plan was merely to abduct and intimidate Summer. However, events took an unexpected and tragic turn. According to Sandra's confession, when Summer was forcibly placed in the car's back seat, Will restrained her with plastic ties around her neck, hands and feet, intending merely to frighten her into granting him access to their children. As the situation escalated, Will realized that Summer was on the brink of unconsciousness. He panicked and desperately searched for a knife to release her, shouting frantically to his mother, "Oh my God, Mom! Where's the knife? I can't find it." Amidst their collective fear and desperate search for the knife, the situation worsened. Summer ceased breathing and tragically passed away. Sandra maintained that their objective was never to take Summer's life. They merely sought a resolution to their custody dispute and hoped to ensure regular visits with their grandchildren. On March 29, 2011, a week after the kidnapping, Sandra Inman disclosed the location of the body. Summer's remains were found in a septic tank on the grounds of Skinnier Faith Church near Nelsonville, about 30 kilometers from her workplace. Bill Inman had been involved in the church's construction. This place held personal significance for him and Sandra, as it was where they had married 28 years earlier. The Inmans were regulars at this church. Bill participated in its musical ensemble. Police uncovered the well by removing a concrete slab and unscrewing 6 bolts from the metal lid. When they opened it, they immediately saw Summer's legs. She had been thrown headfirst into the septic tank, still wearing her work attire. Her black t-shirt bore an ironic inscription, "I don't have anger issues, I have issues with idiots." A forensic examination confirmed that Summer had succumbed to strangulation. Apart from marks on her neck, hands, and legs indicating she'd been restrained, no other injuries were found on her body. This highlighted strangulation as the cause of her tragic demise. Sandra revealed that she originally planned to dispose of the body in a river, but reconsidered and decided it would be safer to conceal it in the well near the church. She believed this location would ensure it remained undiscovered for a long time. Sandra admitted to feeling deep shame for her actions and their irreversible consequences. During the subsequent trial, 49-year-old Bill Inman and 28-year-old Will Inman did not take any responsibility for Summer's death. Throughout the proceedings, they stayed mostly silent, showing no visible emotions and avoiding eye contact with Summer's grieving parents. Sandra Inman, at 47 years old, stood out as the only family member who accepted responsibility for her part in the tragic events. She maintained that the plan to intimidate Summer was entirely her own idea. In a deeply emotional moment before sentencing, Sandra, overcome with tears, faced Summer's parents and begged for their forgiveness. Her speech, though broken by sobs and a quivering voice, clearly expressed remorse. Sandra admitted she saw Summer as a daughter and regretted her catastrophic decision. In 2012, the verdict was handed down. All 3 members of the Inman family were convicted. Bill and Will Inman received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Sandra Inman also got a life sentence, but with eligibility for parole after serving 15 years. However, among friends and church members familiar with the family's dynamics, doubts arose about Sandra being the mastermind behind the crime. It was commonly known that Bill had a dominant role in the family and usually made final decisions on all matters. Will, on his part, was seen as a pampered child whose desires were always met by his parents. Those close to the family speculated that Sandra's confession might have been a strategic move to reduce legal consequences for her husband and son. Currently, Alex and Alana are being raised by Summer's family. For quite some time, it was hard to explain to these grandchildren where their mother, father, grandmother, and grandfather had gone. On September 29, 2006, in St. Patrick's Church in Glasgow, United Kingdom, detectives discovered the body of a young woman. Little did they know, this crime was just the tip of the iceberg. Their investigation led them to one of the ruthless serial offenders in the country. Peter Britton Tobin was born on August 27, 1946, in Johnstone, Scotland. He was the youngest of 8 children in the family of Marjorie and Daniel Tobin. Early on, Peter exhibited a difficult character, prompting his parents to send him to a boarding school in 1953 when he was just 7 years old. However, this seemingly did not yield much benefit. Later on, he was sent to a correctional institution. After completing this period, Peter moved to Brighton, England. There he started a relationship with Margaret Mount, a 17-year-old typist who found his personality irresistible. In August 1969, they got married. However, Peter soon revealed his cruel and controlling nature. Besides that, he was involved in criminal activities and was convicted and imprisoned for theft and forgery a year later. This led Margaret to divorce him in 1973. In the same year, Peter married Sylvia Jeffrey, a local nurse who also fell for his charm. That year they had their first son and named him Ian. Tragically, their daughter Claire died shortly after birth in 1974. Grieving over their lost child and suffering from Peter's abusive treatment led Sylvia to leave in 1976 with their young son. Decades later, when Peter was in his 40s, he pursued new romance again, this time with Kathy Wilson, who was only 16 years old at that time, vulnerable and impressionable, which made it easy for him. Together, they had a son named Daniel, the couple's only child. They married in 1989 and moved to Scotland. It proved challenging. Kathy couldn't go outside freely due to her husband's control over every aspect of her life. His violent behavior continued, reaching significant levels. Consequently, isolation exacerbated her living conditions. The young woman mustered the courage and chose to flee with her son in the late 1990s. It's uncertain if Kathy's departure triggered the worst aspects of the man's character to emerge. However, from this moment on, Peter unleashed a terrible side of himself upon the world, ready to cause much harm. Unfortunately, his path intersected with that of a lovely girl named Vicky Hamilton. Vicky was born in Scotland in 1976. She was the second child of Michael and Janet Hamilton, a married couple who had previously welcomed their firstborn daughter Sharon. Later, Lee and Lindsay joined the family. Nevertheless, serious disagreements between the spouses led to divorce being the most appropriate decision. Vicky, Lee, and Lindsay stayed under their mother's care and moved to South London. The eldest daughter, Sharon, remained in Bathgate, BTHG, but this distance didn't hinder Vicky and Sharon from maintaining their close relationship. When Vicky turned 15, Sharon saw it as a good opportunity for her sister to take a step towards independence. A desire many teenagers have. After traveling alone by bus to Scotland for a weekend visit, Vicky was supposed to return home to her mother's house. It marked her first solo trip by bus. Sharon viewed it as a small, yet significant adventure. On Saturday, February 9th, 1991, the sisters went shopping and engaged in continuous conversation. Sunday was typical, except that Vicky felt apprehensive about her return trip. The evening of February 10th was cold and snowy. Vicky ensured she had enough money for the fare and reviewed the bus route one last time with her sister before they hugged each other tightly. Standing at the bus stop, snacking on a bag of chips across from the police station, it was there Vicky's path crossed with Peter's fatefully. He forcibly dragged her into his car and committed unspeakable acts, raping her and then taking her life either out of malice or to prevent her from reporting him. Peter retained possession of the girl's purse. When Vicky did not arrive at her mother's house and there was no communication from her, her family began searching for her frantically in desperation. Simultaneously, they alerted the authorities about her absence. Once the police began investigating the disappearance, V's face became one of the most recognizable in Scotland. The search operation grew into one of the largest in the country's history. Amidst this uproar, Peter opted to relocate to southeast England, specifically to Margate, where he settled into a charming house with a garden. There, Peter brought Vicky's lifeless body. He wrapped her remains in plastic and concealed them beneath a layer of concrete. He then covered everything with soil. Neighbors thought he had dug a sandbox for his young son, who was 3 years old at the time. Peter's name never surfaced during the initial investigation into Vicky's disappearance. The police found no leads on Vicky's whereabouts and considered her a likely runaway, viewing her as an unhappy teenager due to her parents' divorce. Their theory of voluntary disappearance was reinforced on February 21, 1991, when Vicky's purse was discovered near the main bus station in Edinburgh. Peter, always one step ahead of authorities, created this false lead and completely diverted the course of the investigation. Detectives spent 2 fruitless months searching in London. It is known that Vicky's mother died soon after. Over the next decade, Vicky's family and town residents continued to follow the case closely, but despite listing more than 7,000 names in the file, taking nearly 4,000 statements, and presenting about 500 documents along with 380 potential pieces of physical evidence, all efforts led to a dead end. The case was eventually shelved. The next young woman who encountered Peter was Dina McNichol from Essex. She had a brother and 3 sisters. Her father was a jazz musician, and her mother had tragically died many years prior in a car accident. By age 18, Dina was known as good-hearted and cheerful, a wonderful friend. She had just completed high school and held great hopes for her future. On one hand, possibly, she aimed to take a gap year for travel. On the other hand, she aspired to attend university. However, nothing was certain, because although Dina had applied to several institutions of higher education, she hadn't yet received any responses. During the first weekend of August 1991, Dina attended a music festival in Hampshire. There, she met a young man named David Tremlett. Between dances, they discovered they liked each other. On Sunday, August 4th, they spent the night together in a tent. The following day, Dina assisted him in dismantling the tent, and they agreed to hitchhike back home separately. However, since part of their route was the same, they decided to hitchhike together. Tired but happy, the young couple hit the road to catch a ride. That's when Peter appeared and offered them a lift. David got out of the car first, and Dina wrote down his phone number before saying goodbye. Alone with the unknown driver, Dina was about to experience a real nightmare. On that same Monday, August 5th, 1991, Peter repeated his previous crime as with Vicky. He used Dina's scarf as a gag. After committing the crime, Peter withdrew money from Dina's account at ATMs in Hampshire and Sussex. When her relatives noticed someone withdrawing money from her account, they immediately suspected something was wrong. Her family knew how carefully she saved every penny and what she planned to use that money for, either traveling or continuing her education. Days and weeks went by with no word from Dina. The worst part for her family was living in uncertainty. Though unspoken aloud, everyone was sure something terrible had happened. After all, if Dina were alive, she would have returned home or called to explain her absence. As for Peter, he left Margate without saying goodbye or explaining anything. Later in 1993, he settled in Hampshire, specifically in a rented apartment in Leek Park. He argued that he wanted to be closer to his son. On August 4th, 1993, 2 14-year-olds went to visit a local woman, but found she wasn't home. They decided to ask other neighbors if they had seen her around instead. As a result, they knocked on Peter's door. The man saw a unique opportunity and invited them into his home to wait for the force they were looking for. They saw that the man's 5-year-old son was in there, mistook him for a friendly person, and agreed to enter. There is another version about the reasons for this meeting, which suggests it was not accidental. The two girls came to Peter's home in response to a request for a babysitter that the man had made. They trusted him because when they arrived, they saw his son and stayed to look after him. Everyone agrees that when the child fell asleep, Peter tied them up, threatened them with a knife, and forced them to drink alcohol. He then beat and raped them, injuring one of the girls. Just when they thought their lives would end at the hands of this extremely cruel man, a boy woke up. This saved them from suffering the same fatal fate that befell Vicky and Dina. In an effort to keep his son from realizing what had happened and understanding what kind of father he was, Peter decided to leave the apartment with the child. According to some reports, Peter left around 2 a.m., but before that he turned on the gas in the kitchen, hoping to complete his monstrous task. However, the girls regained consciousness and managed to escape. They went to the police and reported all the abuses committed by Peter, whom they described in detail. Peter returned his child to his mother and joined a religious sect called the Communion of Jesus under a false name. He hoped to go unnoticed there, but in the meantime, media published his photograph provided by police, making his face widely known. Due to mass media coverage, information about this man started pouring in, and his car was also identified thanks to BBC Crime Watch program. He was located, and after 40 days on the run, he was captured in Brighton. He appeared in court on May 18, 1994, where he pleaded guilty to sexual assault and indecent acts against 2 young girls, and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. However, Peter did not serve his full sentence and was released in 2014 at the age of 58, immediately after his release from prison. He went back to Scotland, aiming to relocate from the area where he was registered as a sex offender. For a while, he managed to stay off the radar until 6. Under a false name and posing as a homeless person, he knocked on the door of the Church of St. Patrick in Glasgow. To avoid getting exposed, he adopted the name Peter McLaughlin. Dennis and Katie Curran, a married couple from the church's charitable group, recall that evening vividly when a homeless man sought shelter. Despite his vulnerable appearance, Katie had an uneasy feeling about him. Peter was brought up as a Catholic and soon felt at ease in this church. His apparent begging served as an effective disguise because it only aroused sympathy from parishioners, with few paying much attention to him. Consequently, he roamed freely around the church, an ideal hiding place for him. However, his predatory instincts stayed intact. Being in a sacred place held no significance for him. Calculating every move meticulously, Peter displayed eagerness to assist in church repairs. After about 6 or 7 weeks, he asked the priest if he could join the maintenance staff. At that time, people facing financial difficulties often sought refuge in churches. It was through such circumstances that Angelica Clark crossed paths with Peter. Angelica was a 23-year-old woman from Poland who came to Scotland during the summer of 2006. She wanted to spend her summer break working to earn money and fund her language studies back home. She lived at the parish house of St. Patrick's Church, where she also worked as a cleaner. Peter took an immediate liking to her and somehow convinced her to help him with various tasks occasionally. On Sunday, September 24, 2006, Angelica spent several hours assisting him in painting a shed. Some parishioners noticed them together before Peter attacked her at the back of the chapel. Leica Brown, 47, and her husband Andrew, 46, who lived in a multi-story house overlooking the church, heard a woman scream through their open windows. In her statement afterward, Leica described it as a brief scream that sounded like someone being forcibly restrained. It was so eerie that it compelled her to get up from the couch and approach the window, but she saw nothing. The scream heard by the Browns coincided with the moment when Peter caught the young girl off guard as she stood her back to him. He struck her forcefully and dragged her to the back of the chapel, where he continued to beat her. After she lost consciousness, he raped her and then inflicted several knife wounds. He hid the body in the basement, under the floor near the confessional. At this point, Angelica was still alive. Several hours passed, and parishioners began to notice that the young girl was missing. That's when Dennis informed his wife, Katie, about Angelica's unusual disappearance. The police quickly initiated an investigation and started interviewing members of the community one by one. During these interviews, it came to light that Peter was the last person seen with Angelica, albeit disguised as Pete, a homeless laborer. Eventually, he became the prime suspect. Officers went to question him, but found no evidence linking him directly to Angelica's disappearance, so they continued their investigation. Aware that it was only a matter of time before they discovered the body and traced everything back to him, Peter fled to London. By this time, Detective David Swindle had joined the investigation. He soon began to suspect that this case wasn't merely a disappearance. Based on their findings and collected testimonies, Detective Swindle believed it was unlikely Angelica would be found alive. Finally, on September 29, 2006, authorities discovered her body in the chapel. This news shocked British society due to both the nature of the crime and the location chosen by the perpetrator for hiding the body. Examining the girl's injuries led Detective David to suspect that this wasn't Peter's first crime. However, he didn't yet know how horrific and dangerous this individual turned out to be. Further revelations were inevitable. DNA found at the crime scene and on Angelica matched data in the United Kingdom's National Criminal Intelligence database. That's when they learned exactly who they were dealing with. A man whose actions indicated deep-seated brutality and criminal sophistication. The individual they were looking for turned out to be Peter Tobin, whose fingerprints had been discovered at the crime scene. Consequently, the first step for the authorities was to publish his photograph in the media. His image was distributed nationwide, and the Scottish police reached out to the Metropolitan Police, initiating a search across the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, in London, Peter attempted to conceal himself by going to a hospital and pretending he had heart problems. He claimed he had chest pain and weakness on the left side of his body. Identifying himself as a plumber named James Kelly, he was examined by Dr. Nick Lasso. However, something about his demeanor and behavior raised concerns for the doctor. Initially avoiding eye contact, a behavior atypical of most patients, Peter became suspicious when tests failed to reveal any clear physical cause for his alleged pain. The doctor's suspicions were confirmed by a nurse who recognized Peter from a photograph that had been circulating in the media. As a result, both the nurse and doctor contacted the police. This phone call significantly altered the course of the investigation. On September 30th, police officer Alan Murray was dispatched to the hospital in London. Peter was taken into a room so Alan could speak with him. Immediately following this encounter, Peter was arrested. Although initially only charged with violating the sex offender registry, this approach allowed officers time to build a criminal case against him. Under Detective David's leadership, evidence gathered led to Peter's trial for crimes against Angelica in late March 2007. Despite substantial evidence against him, Peter denied committing violent acts against her, claiming instead they engaged in consensual sexual activity. He also denied providing false information to police and hospital staff. After 6 weeks of legal proceedings characterized by lies and manipulations on Peter's part, the truth finally prevailed. He was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, but with the possibility of parole after 21 years. Detective David and his team were convinced that there was more to Peter's story. While the trial was ongoing, detectives delved into Peter's life. They gathered additional evidence and compiled a dossier. This was done with the involvement of various law enforcement agencies across the country. To avoid harming or interfering with Angelica's case, they preferred to conduct their work confidentially. The joint police operation was known as Anagram. Part of their work involved connecting missing persons cases to places where Peter had been. During these investigations, they established 2 precise links. one in Bathgate and another in Margate. Several weeks later, a search was conducted in Peter's old house on the coast. They found a knife with DNA samples hidden in the attic. However, there was nothing else there. Then they went to the house where Peter lived in Margate. There, it became clear they were dealing with a serious criminal offender. Investigators dug up a sandbox in the garden of the house, one that Peter had made for his son. And shockingly enough, they found a female body there. But that wasn't all. When they continued searching at the same location, they found another body. A woman's handbag was also discovered at the scene, which the team preserved for DNA analysis. Forensic experts worked diligently to establish the identities of the two victims, determine their ages, and estimate their dates of death. They also analyzed traces from the handbag. These genetic traces were very strong, but initially yielded no matches in the national DNA database. However, on June 1, 2007, there was a crucial breakthrough. The DNA matched Peter's fingerprint. This development proved monumental for investigators who deemed it necessary to move forward decisively in this direction by November. On August 14, 2007, authorities confirmed that one of the bodies found belonged to Vicky Hamilton, who disappeared at 15 years old during her first independent. Her family had been waiting for answers for 16 years. Later, it was announced that the second body belonged to 18-year-old Dinah McNichol, who was hitchhiking home after attending a concert. On September 1, 2008, the Royal Prosecution Service contacted Peter's lawyers and charged him with the murder of Vicky, leading to his trial. Officers had to restrain Vicky's father, Michael, after he saw Peter face to face. Michael later admitted he simply wanted Peter to know he was there to defend his daughter's name and protect her memory. After a month-long trial on December 2, 2008, Peter was found guilty of Vicky's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The trial for Dinah took place in December 2009. On December 16th, after the defense failed to provide evidence exonerating their client, the jury found Peter guilty of Dinah's murder. He subsequently received his third life sentence. On November 22, 2007, it was reported that Tobin had been attacked by fellow inmates. He sustained minor injuries. Shortly before this incident, the serial killer had confessed to a total of 11 murders. Recently, on October 8, 2022, Peter passed away in the hospital. On June 1, 2011, the Waller family's life took a turn. A woman named Jackie contacted her sister Cheryl, informing her that she was going to pick up her children from her ex-husband Clay. Jackie planned to return home later that day. However, she never came back, nor did she make any further contact. Worried and unable to reach Jackie, Cheryl became increasingly anxious. By around 7 p.m., Cheryl decided to drive to the police station. Here, she made a startling statement. Cheryl claimed that Clay Waller had killed her sister. The police officers found this accusation shocking, since Jackie had only called a few hours earlier, and there hadn't been any immediate cause for concern or reason to believe she was in danger at that time. Despite the unusual nature of Cheryl's assertion, it eventually became apparent that her instincts were correct. Jackie was indeed entangled in a troubling situation. So, what exactly happened to Jackie? And why was Cheryl so convinced her sister had been murdered by her ex-husband, even before Jackie was declared missing? Jackie was known for being sweet, kind, and caring. When she met Clay, there was an instant connection between them. Clay had a speech impediment that had subjected him to ridicule by others. This made him feel awkward and uncomfortable in social situations. However, unlike others, Jackie didn't ridicule him. Instead, she defended him and ensured he wasn't hurt by people's unkind remarks. Jackie's nature was all about protecting the vulnerable, fighting injustice, and helping everyone around her. It wasn't long before their bond grew stronger and they got married. At the time of their marriage, both were about 30 years old and aspired to have a large family. They bought a small house in Sanguine View, Missouri, where Jackie began creating a family nest. She had a successful career. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said about Clay. His life consisted of numerous failures, and he struggled with holding down any job for long periods. As a result, Jackie became the primary breadwinner of the family. She always dreamed of having children, but faced challenges in conceiving naturally. Determined to become a mother, though, she underwent fertility treatments, commonly referred to as ECO. So when Jackie discovered she was pregnant, with triplets no less, her joy knew no bounds. The family included 2 girls, Abby and Addison, plus 1 boy, Maddox. It was incredibly challenging for the woman to care for 3 children at once. Nonetheless, she did not complain. She continued to shoulder all responsibilities by herself, without relying on her husband. He seemed uninterested in the children. At that time, Clay took a job with the sheriff's office to support the family while his wife cared for the children. However, he didn't stay long. He was fired after a year. Only Jackie's parents and sister provided assistance with the children, allowing her some respite. When Clay lost his job, Jackie took on work to support the entire family. Even after their children were born, Clay did not change his behavior and showed little interest in either his family or work. Occasionally, he engaged in part-time work that didn't bring in the expected income. Clay seemed comfortable living off his wife's hard work. She worked 40 hours a week and managed the household simultaneously. Jackie's career progressed rapidly. She soon secured a management position at an insurance company branch. This advancement further relaxed Clay's attitude toward financial responsibility. Instead of appreciating his wife's efforts, Clay mistreated her in various ways. He insulted her frequently, called her worthless, and demeaned her value by stating no one wanted her. His infidelities and abusive actions caused significant distress. Jackie's parents and sister were deeply troubled by Clay's behavior and urged her to divorce him. However, Jackie was reluctant to take such a drastic step at that time and tried to salvage their marriage. Every day brought diminishing hope that their relationship could be saved. Over the next few years, financial difficulties compounded their problems because Clay was not working while Jackie's salary could no longer cover all expenses for their large family. Mounting mortgage debts led to their house being foreclosed upon. The woman decided it was time to move in with sister, seizing upon the opportunity. Her husband then relocated to a friend's place. At this point, their children were a bit older. Jackie faced the tough, yet necessary choice to file for divorce. She believed she and her kids deserved a better life. When Jackie brought this up with her husband, Clay seemed calm initially. However, he soon changed his stance and refused the divorce. His threats started subtly, but gradually escalated into direct threats against her life. He warned that divorcing him would be like signing a death warrant for herself and their children. These threats terrified Jackie, yet she remained resolute. Living under such conditions was no longer an option for her, so she sought ways to end her marriage with Clay. She turned to her family, sharing the troubling behaviors of her husband, and began keeping a diary to document his actions. Jackie also noticed that Clay was stalking her. For the sake of safety, she and her children moved in with her sister during this period. Her kids were only 5 years old and didn't understand the situation fully. Nonetheless, Jackie explained that their current living arrangement was crucial. Time passed, and things began to stabilize as the divorce process neared its conclusion. It appeared that Clay had come to terms with their separation and ceased his harassment towards Jackie. They even started forming new relationships on the side. Jackie allowed Clay visitation rights with their children, and disputes between them reduced significantly. On June 1, 2011, Clay and Jackie agreed to meet at the attorney's office to finalize the last aspects of their divorce. On that day, their son Maddox was visiting his father, while Jackie's other children stayed with Cheryl, Jackie's sister. After the meeting at the attorney's office, Jackie planned to pick up Maddox from Clay's house before heading back to Cheryl's place. Leaving the office, Jackie telephoned her sister Cheryl to report that everything had gone smoothly and mentioned she was on her way to collect Maddox from Clay's residence before returning home. That conversation would be their last. Jackie gradually lost touch. As time passed, Her sister became increasingly anxious and started calling Jackie, but there was no answer. She then tried calling Clay, but he didn't respond either. Cheryl began to suspect that Clay had done something to Jackie. She sent him a text message. "If I don't hear from Jackie in 5 minutes, I'm going to the police." Almost immediately, Clay called back asking what was wrong. Cheryl responded firmly, stating that she believed he knew exactly what was happening. Clay asserted he didn't know where Jackie was and mentioned he would instruct her to call Cheryl when he saw her. However, Cheryl wasn't convinced. She took her sister's children to their parents at a house and filed a police report personally. Despite initial skepticism about Clay's involvement in Jackie's disappearance, the detectives took her concerns seriously. They didn't make her wait for 24 hours before investigating further. Instead, they proceeded to contact Jackie's ex-husband for any leads on her whereabouts. When questioned, 41-year-old Clay informed them that he had lunch with Jackie. They subsequently went to the attorney's office to discuss some aspects of their divorce, and then drove together to his house for further discussions. He claimed that after chatting for a while, he left for the store. Upon his return, Jackie's car was gone. He assumed she had departed. Clay added that his son Midex was in Illinois with his new girlfriend at the time, and insisted Jackie was aware of it. According to him, Jackie wasn't there for her son, but merely to talk about other matters with Clay. However, Cheryl found his statements implausible and inconsistent with what she knew. Jackie made it known that her visit to Clay's house was solely for seeing her son. She had no intention of discussing anything else with him, especially given that she wouldn't have allowed her son to be far away with another woman. Noting these discrepancies, Cheryl managed to convince the investigators that Clay's account lacked credibility and suggested he might be concealing crucial information about Jackie's disappearance. In light of this new perspective provided by Cheryl, investigators were now treating the case more urgently, as both the missing person and her car remained unaccounted for. A comprehensive search was launched for Jackie a few hours after her disappearance. Investigators her Honda Pilot on an interstate highway with a flat tire, but there were no signs of an accident. The tire appeared punctured intentionally, making the scene look staged. The car was open and empty, with a few bloodstains on the back seat, but no other clues indicating her whereabouts. These disturbing details hinted at a possible attack and kidnapping. The search effort for Jackie was concentrated in the vicinity where her car was found. Numerous volunteers, including police officers, rescue squads with dogs, and family members, participated in the search. They came from various parts of the region, responding to requests from Jackie's relatives. Despite the unbearable heat, many were willing to help locate her. Jackie's family announced a reward of $3,500 for information about her whereabouts. Despite their efforts, including extensive searches and public appeals for assistance, the search yielded no results for several days. Police began to scrutinize Clay, Jackie's ex-husband, more closely. When they visited his house to speak with him again, he recounted the same story as before, but refused access to his home and car. He promptly hired a lawyer who asserted his rights. 4 days after Jackie's disappearance, Clay left her a voicemail with a distressed tone. "Hi honey, it's Sunday. You went missing on Wednesday. Please call me if you get this message. I don't know where you are, and I miss you very much." Detectives later obtained a search warrant and returned to Clay's residence for a thorough inspection. During this inspection, they discovered blood-like stains in his vehicle. Forensic analysis revealed it was fish blood. Clay had deliberately coated the car with fish blood and recorded it on video as a test for forensic experts. In addition to examining the vehicle, investigators noted conspicuous details in Clay's house. A section of carpet had been removed from the floor, leaving an obvious mark. Tiny drops of blood were also found on the walls of the hallway leading to the basement. These findings raised further questions about Clay's involvement and intentions regarding Jackie's disappearance. Traces of furniture rearrangement were evident, signaling that something unusual was happening in the house. Forensics examined under the floorboards and discovered a bloody carpet. Blood samples from the house and the carpet were sent to the laboratory for further examination. Detectives tracked the missing woman's last known movements to 1:10 a.m. She was observed at a drugstore with her ex-husband. The pair appeared composed and normal. Approximately 2 hours later, she was seen at an ATM withdrawing money. After that, Jackie did not reappear on CCTV, although Clay was seen a few hours later with his son and new girlfriend at a toy store. Subsequently, they visited a car wash in their pickup truck, which had a suspicious trash can inside. By then, Clay had changed clothes and meticulously washed both the car and the boat. This increased suspicion around him, establishing him as the prime suspect. Investigators released photos of Clay's pickup truck and boat, requesting eyewitnesses who may have seen them. A young couple reported seeing Clay near Devil's Island on the Mississippi River in response to this request. Detectives confirmed this information through an analysis of Clay's cell phone billing records, prompting them to focus search efforts in that area. Despite numerous searches over the large terrain, nothing surfaced directly linking to the missing woman. The forensic results soon arrived, indicating that the drops of blood found in Clay's house indeed belonged to Jackie. The police then operated under the assumption that Jackie was deceased. Detectives called Clay in for questioning and attempted to procure a confession from him regarding Jackie's murder. However, Clay denied all accusations, stating that the bloodstains were remnants of an old domestic incident in his kitchen. Without physical remains or definitive proof of death, investigators lacked grounds to arrest or charge him. Despite releasing him from custody, authorities kept Clay under close surveillance and continued their investigation. Being an ex-deputy sheriff himself, Clay knew they were monitoring him closely and engaged in deceptive maneuvers to elude detection, effectively playing cat and mouse with law enforcement officials. He'd go to deserted vacant lots to mislead the investigation, while the entire neighborhood stood by and participated in the search for the missing mother of three. Clay continued to bully and taunt them. He would drive past the search party or Jackie's family, insult them, give them the middle finger, and shout that they were wasting their time and wouldn't find anything. His defiant behavior raised more suspicions and questions. Meanwhile, the missing woman's sister Cheryl fought in court for custody of the triplets. She feared the children would go to a father who was a danger. His erratic behavior backfired on him, and Cheryl got custody. This enraged him, and he began threatening his ex-wife's sister with violence, including writing about it on social media. The woman recorded these threats and contacted police. Detectives seized the opportunity and arrested Clay nearly 5 months after Jackie's disappearance. He was charged with threats to life, which he accepted, but claimed he wrote out of anger and despair at losing custody of his beloved children. Clay insisted he didn't plan anything bad against Cheryl. He viewed himself as a victim in this situation. While investigating this incident with his sister, police found out he had other charges pending against him: stealing $50,000 from a previous employer, as well as stalking a man. Detectives pressed his former co-worker, hoping Clay would confess to killing his ex-wife and lead them to her body, but it was futile. Clayton continued to deny all charges regarding Jackie's disappearance. Instead of confessing to the crime, he started claiming confidently that he knew who was behind his ex-wife's death, a man named Harry, but detectives had already checked this lead thoroughly. Harry had an ironclad alibi that eliminated him from suspicion. All evidence pointed only to Clay, yet he kept denying it. He ended up going to prison for 5 years for threatening Cheryl. While the police locked him up in jail, they continued to investigate Jackie's disappearance. The search for the missing woman continued on Devil's Island, but never yielded any results. Eventually, about 2 years after Jackie's disappearance, the cops gathered a lot of circumstantial evidence, video camera footage, blood in his house, and more. They decided to charge Clay with his ex-wife's murder, even without her body. It was a risky and desperate move because if they lost, the prosecutor's office would not be able to charge him a second time. However, the prosecutor was determined. After consulting with his accomplices, Clay concluded that it would be best for them to make a deal with the prosecution to reduce the sentence. To do so, the defendant offered to plead guilty to the murder and provide the location of the body. Jackie's family agreed to this deal because it was important to give her a decent burial. Clay led police officers to his ex-wife's body. It was in a secluded spot on a remote sandbar on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. At first, he couldn't remember exactly which tree he had buried her under, but then admitted that he had placed a bag of fertilizer on top of her body. One of the policemen, who was an active gardener, explained that large quantities of fertilizer killed trees. They looked around and found 3 dead trees that were of interest to them. They excavated there, and under one of the trees, they did find Jackie's body wearing the same clothes she had last been seen in. The woman was identified from dental records as Jackie Waller. Finally, Jackie's loved ones recognized that she was definitely dead and found her body. Then they were able to commit her to the ground. The woman's funeral was held on her parents' golden wedding day. Cheryl told their children that their mom was gone, and she had been killed by their father. This event was a great shock to the children because they lost both their mother and father at once. The children developed a deep aversion to Clay and refused to communicate with him henceforth. As part of the agreement, Clay had to officially confess to the murder of his ex-wife and provide specific details. He explained that the initial thoughts of murder began to surface about a year before the tragic event, when Jackie announced their separation. Despite this, he tried to suppress those dark thoughts, as Jackie was the mother of his children. However, he couldn't bear the idea of her taking his children away. He warned Jackie that such actions would have dire consequences for her, but she didn't heed his warning, which he considered her fault. The night prior to the murder, Clay traveled to a secluded area on Devil's Island to dig a grave for Jackie. According to him, their divorce proceedings were generally progressing smoothly. On that particular day, after a visit to their lawyer, they had a conversation in which she suggested they engage in intimacy one last time. They then went back to his home, where they talked in the kitchen. While looking for a snack in the refrigerator, Clay accidentally raised his head, hitting Jackie and causing her nose to bleed. This incident angered her. She stormed out into the hallway, where she smeared blood on the walls and started yelling at him that he would never see his children again. At this point, Clay lost control and attacked her. He hit her in the face with his hand and then strangled her. Subsequently, he took Jackie's body out in a dumpster and buried it in the pre-dug grave. Afterward, he meticulously cleaned out both the car and house, took a shower, changed clothes, as if nothing happened, and then went on to meet his new girlfriend and son at a toy store. Throughout this process, Clay claimed that everything was driven by impulse and emotion. He did not originally intend to kill Jackie. This contradicted his earlier statement, claiming he had dug the grave the day before. However, if Clay did not plan to kill the woman, why would he have dug the grave beforehand? It appeared to be premeditated murder. The medical examiner found multiple skull fractures on the deceased, indicating blunt force rather than a simple beating with fists. No one believed his story. Clay, who showed no remorse for killing his ex-wife, felt jubilant at receiving only 20 years in prison for second-degree murder, with the possibility of early release. The prosecutor, however, had another strategy. Clay's testimony about digging the grave buried him further. He had dug the hole in Illinois, while the murder occurred in Missouri. These actions fell under the federal law against domestic violence across state lines, and their violation allowed an additional 35 years to be added to his sentence. Clay Waller will be eligible for parole after serving 85% of his 55-year sentence. It turned out that Clay was unaware of such a law and did not foresee the consequences of his confession. Yet, his atrocities continued. Demonstrating further callousness, he wrote a book detailing Jackie's murder to profit from the tragedy. Cheryl, Jackie's sister, along with her husband, continues to raise Jackie's children with support from their elderly parents. The children have grown up remembering their mother as an exceptional person who remains forever in their hearts. They still harbor anger toward their father and deeply miss their mom. The case of Lori Sars, the pregnant woman whose body was found in a city landfill, highlights how even a seemingly insignificant lie can lead to serious and tragic consequences. Behind every lie lies a motive, whether it's a desire to avoid punishment, gain advantage, or simply to maintain appearances. In some cases, lies are used to protect confidentiality or spare someone's feelings. In the case of Lori Sars, the story began with a small deception that snowballed into a devastating tragedy. Her mysterious disappearance in 2004 sent shockwaves through Salt Lake City. Her husband, Mark Hacking, reported her missing, sparking a massive search effort that captured national attention. However, the shocking truth behind Lori's disappearance would soon come to light. Mark Hacking's deceit stemmed from childhood trauma and a fear of not meeting others' expectations. As the details of his lies unraveled, the media frenzy intensified, with the case becoming the subject of numerous television talk shows and feature films. Lori Sars, also known by her married name Lori Hacking, was born in 1976. The tragic circumstances of her disappearance shed light on the destructive power of dishonesty and the devastating impact it can have on individuals and their loved ones. On December 31st, in the quaint city of Fullerton, nestled in California, a girl began her journey in the most unlikely of places, a children's orphanage, where she was placed immediately after birth. Her origins shrouded in mystery, with no trace of her birth parents. At the tender age of 2, fate smiled upon her as she was welcomed into the loving embrace of a religious couple, Thelma and Geraldo Suarez. Geraldo, hailing from the sun-kissed lands of São Paulo, Brazil, found himself teaching the intricacies of Portuguese and English at Sunny Hills High School. It was amidst the bustling streets of Rio de Janeiro in the early 70s where he crossed paths with Thelma. Their shared mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints cemented their bond, leading to a union in matrimony. Despite their devotion, biological children eluded them, but their hearts remained open to the blessings of adoption. Their journey brought them to Fullerton in the late 70s, where they embraced parenthood with open arms, welcoming Lori into their lives. In 1987, another addition, a son named Paul, completed their family. However, life's journey took an unexpected turn, leading the couple down separate paths, and the adopted children found solace under Thelma's care. Relocating to the tranquil town of Orem, Utah, mother and children forged ahead. Lori and Paul flourished, traversing the halls of local high schools and later venturing into the realms of higher education. Lori, in particular, blossomed into a compassionate, spirited young woman, her warmth and kindness touching the lives of all who crossed her path. Amidst the tapestry of her upbringing, Lori found love for the first time at the age of 19, a chapter in her life marked by the gentle whispers of romance and the promise of a future yet to unfold. Lori's path intertwined with that of her future husband, Mark Douglas Hacking. Born in April 1976 in the heart of North Carolina, Mark hailed from a lineage of esteemed medical professionals. As the youngest of 3 sons in the illustrious Hacking family, Mark inherited a legacy of excellence. His father, Douglas Hacking, stood as a prominent pediatrician, while his mother, Helena, contributed her expertise as a nurse. Mark's older brothers, Scotty and Lance, carved their own paths of success in the realm of science. Mark exuded an aura of determination and ambition, mirroring the aspirations of his esteemed kin. With dreams of pursuing a medical career akin to his family members, Mark radiated care and attentiveness, embodying the essence of a devoted family man. It was under the serendipitous veil of fate that Lori crossed paths with Mark, and from that moment, their bond remained unbroken. After 5 years of nurturing their romance, the couple took the leap into matrimony, forging a life together within the quaint confines of Salt Lake City, Utah. By then, Lori had already flourished in her career, ascending to the role of senior assistant manager in a prestigious company, while Mark, with honors adorning his academic journey, embarked on his medical odyssey at the University of Utah. Amidst their shared joy, the couple reveled in the anticipation of impending parenthood, with Lori's pregnancy casting a radiant glow upon their lives. Plans for a new chapter unfurled as they prepared to relocate to North Carolina, where Mark would pursue his medical residency, and Lori, her professional endeavors. Theirs was a tapestry of promise and potential, woven with dreams of a blissful future. Yet fate's cruel hand intervened on July 19, 2004, shattering their idyllic existence. Lori, 3 months pregnant, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void of uncertainty and despair. Mark's frantic attempts to reach her on that fateful day were met with eerie silence, signaling the onset of a harrowing ordeal. As the days stretched into an agonizing abyss of unanswered questions, the mystery of Lori's disappearance veiled their once bright future in a shroud of darkness. Several hours elapsed before Mark made his way to the police station, his heart heavy with worry as he reported the inexplicable disappearance of his 27-year-old pregnant wife. According to Mark's account, Lori had ventured to a nearby park in the morning, a routine part of her pre-work exercise regimen, but failed to return home thereafter. Initially assuming she had proceeded directly to her workplace, Mark's concern deepened upon discovering Lori had left her phone behind. As he recounted the events to attentive police officers, Mark's voice trembled with apprehension. However, protocol dictated that a formal search for a missing adult would commence only after a 24-hour period had elapsed since the disappearance. Undeterred by bureaucratic timelines, Mark resolved to initiate his search, driven by the fear that Lori may have fallen ill and required assistance. Setting out to the park where Lori had intended to visit that day, Mark's hopes were dashed upon finding her car parked at the neighborhood's periphery, yet no sign of Lori in sight. Returning home, he embarked on a relentless quest, reaching out to friends, relatives, and colleagues in a desperate bid for information. Their collective response echoed his distress, with no one having seen or heard from Lori on that fateful day. Word of Lori's disappearance quickly spread, igniting a groundswell of community concern. Before law enforcement intervened, hundreds of individuals, comprising relatives, friends, acquaintances, and concerned citizens, rallied to join the search effort. Together, they combed the vicinity, engaging neighbors, local vendors, and passers-by in their quest for any semblance of information, while plastering the area with flyers adorned with Lori's visage, a poignant plea for her safe return. On July 20th, as the official report of Lori's disappearance emerged, the news swiftly reached the media, casting a pall of concern over Salt Lake City. In response, the relatives of the missing woman convened a press conference, their faces etched with worry, beseeching the community for assistance. Mark, Lori's husband, stood at the forefront, his anguish palpable as tears streamed down his cheeks, imploring anyone with information about his pregnant wife's whereabouts to come forward. By nightfall, a groundswell of support had materialized, with nearly 1,000 individuals joining the search effort. As police scrutinized Lori's abandoned car, a perplexing detail emerged. Despite Lori's petite stature, the driver's seat had been adjusted to accommodate someone much larger, a discrepancy too glaring to ignore. Further confounding investigators, a key revelation surfaced during a search of the Hacking residence: the discovery of the car keys purportedly found in the park. The incongruity was glaring. How could the keys be within the home if Lori, as Mark had claimed, had departed in the car and never returned? This turn of events immediately raised suspicions about Mark. He claimed that the keys had been left in the ignition when he discovered the car, so he simply took them out and brought them home. While this explanation wasn't enough to detain him, it certainly warranted closer scrutiny from law enforcement. Soon, suspicions about his involvement in his wife's disappearance were substantiated in a most unexpected manner. Overwhelmed by grief, Mark's behavior took a bizarre turn. The day after Lori was reported missing, police received reports of Mark running naked through the city streets, his cries unintelligible. His distraught demeanor and erratic actions prompted a psychiatric evaluation, raising questions about his mental state. While many attributed his breakdown to the stress of his wife's disappearance, police speculated that it could have been a ploy to feign insanity and evade accountability. As Mark underwent psychiatric assessment investigators obtained permission to conduct a thorough search of the couple's residence. What they discovered painted a chilling picture: traces of blood in the marital bedroom, alongside remnants of stained bedding. Curiously, a new mattress, purchased on the morning of July 19th, the day Lori vanished according to Mark's account, had replaced the old one. Moreover, concealed within the closet lay a sizable kitchen knife, its blade bearing what appeared to be dried blood. But the most damning evidence awaited investigators in the living room. An envelope addressed to Mark lay conspicuously on a table, containing a letter purportedly written by Lori herself. In the letter, Lori accused Mark of betraying her trust throughout their marriage, declaring their need to part ways. This revelation cast a grim shadow over the investigation, suggesting a far darker truth behind Lori's disappearance, one that hinted at betrayal and potential foul play. This revelation finally convinced law enforcement that Mark was directly implicated in his wife's disappearance. The only remaining task was to unravel the events of July 19th. A breakthrough in shedding light on the situation came from Mark's father, Douglas Hacking. According to Douglas, Mark had never graduated from the University of Utah, nor become a certified psychologist. He had been expelled 2 years prior, shortly after marrying Lori. Fearful of disappointing his beloved and his family, Mark continued to masquerade as a student, fabricating assignments and defending his diploma in a charade that snowballed out of control. Mark's confession to his father, made just a month before the tragedy, laid bare the extent of his deceit. He attributed his actions to familial pressure, feeling compelled to match the success of his relatives in the medical field. As the sole breadwinner in their family, Lori remained oblivious to the truth, with Douglas unknowingly enabling Mark by providing financial support. When the time came for Mark to defend his diploma, Douglas arranged an interview at a medical school in North Carolina, only to discover Mark's lack of credentials. Despite Douglas's insistence that Mark come clean to Lori, he persisted in his deception, claiming acceptance to the medical school on the premise of his fictitious psychology degree. Unbeknownst to Mark, Douglas took matters into his own hands and divulged the truth to Lori's sister. Shocked by the revelation, Lori grappled with the betrayal of 2 years' worth of lies from her husband, compounded by the fact that she was carrying his child. Wrestling with her shattered trust, Lori confided in her closest friend, seeking solace and guidance in the midst of overwhelming uncertainty. On July 25th, 6 days following Lori's disappearance, Mark, confined to a psychiatric hospital, was visited by his older brothers, where he divulged a chilling confession. He had taken the life of his pregnant wife, Lore, with a .22 caliber rifle. However, he withheld specific details initially, leaving investigators to piece together the grim events that transpired in the Hacking household. During a search of the local hospital's dumpster, authorities uncovered a spring mattress, meticulously cut into pieces, stained with blood and dark hair, an expertise later confirmed to belong to Lori. Mark hinted to his brothers that he had similarly dismembered Lori's body, bagged it, and disposed of it in a dumpster. Despite exhaustive efforts, no trace of her remains surfaced, prompting a massive search of the city's landfill by police and volunteers. Amidst mounting evidence of Mark's culpability, legal complexities loomed. Though law enforcement harbored no doubts regarding his involvement, the absence of a body posed challenges. Nevertheless, on August 2nd, Mark faced formal charges of first-degree murder and obstructing an investigation, leading to his transfer to a mental health facility within the jail. A grim discovery on August 9th marked a critical breakthrough. Human remains were unearthed at the landfill, confirmed through expert examination to be Lori's. Subsequent investigations revealed a harrowing narrative. On July 18th, Lori penned a note to Mark, expressing her intent to divorce him upon discovering his web of lies, fabrications about his education, aspirations, and reliance on familial support. Unwilling to accept Lori's decision, Mark resorted to an unthinkable act of violence. In the dead of night, as Lori slept, he callously ended her life with a single gunshot to the head. What followed was a calculated effort to conceal his heinous crime, orchestrating a facade of her disappearance. As legal proceedings unfolded, initial plans for seeking the death penalty underscored the gravity of Mark's actions, casting a shadow of justice over a tragic saga of deceit and destruction. For Mark, however, lingering doubts persisted regarding his awareness at the time of the crime. Subsequently, the penalty was revised to life imprisonment. Only in April 2005, under mounting evidence and legal counsel's advisement, did the accused confess to the murder. Yet, he remained unable to articulate a motive for his actions. Tearfully, he lamented Lori's significance in his life, expressing profound fear of losing her. On that fateful night, he claimed to have lost control, seized by a delirium that led him to fatally shoot his pregnant wife as she slept. Mark attributed his mental instability to familial pressures, which he perceived as relentless demands for academic excellence and unattainable standards. Following his university withdrawal, he bore the weight of shame for failing to meet these expectations, spiraling into a web of deceit from which he could not escape. Throughout court proceedings, Mark appeared in a bulletproof vest, facing incessant death threats. On June 6, 2005, the defendant was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, eligible for parole no sooner than 2035. Despite Mark and his legal team's appeals, all attempts to overturn the verdict were fruitless. Upon hearing the verdict, the murderer himself acknowledged the prison as his rightful abode, acknowledging the impossibility of fully atoning for his actions. The consequences of his unfathomable crime reverberated, leaving irreparable scars on the lives of all involved. Lori's family made the poignant decision to erase the name Hacking from her headstone, laying her to rest under her maiden name, Suarez. For Thelma, this symbolic act served to sever ties with the man who had robbed her of her daughter and the promise of a future grandchild. A year into his incarceration, authorities discovered that Hacking was profiting from the sale of personal items, including autographs, palm prints, and even prison letterheads, on an online murder auction website. Upon being interviewed, Hacking voluntarily ceased this activity and expressed remorse for his actions. Remarkably, in the years following his imprisonment, Hacking maintained correspondence with his former mother-in-law, Thelma Suarez. Despite the deep anguish of her loss, Thelma, guided by her faith, extended forgiveness to her son-in-law and endeavored to find solace amidst the enduring pain. The tragic case of Lori Suarez became the focal point of an episode in the television series Escape. It also sparked extensive discussions on various talk shows and documentary projects, including being featured as the inaugural episode of the crime television series Lies Worth Dying For. Furthermore, in 2014, the second season of My Dirty Little Secret dedicated an episode to the murder of Lori Hacking. Additionally, the true crime podcast Sword and Scale delves into the intricate details of the case in its 29th episode. He had been in serious relationships with women more than once. For example, in 1993, during his university years, he was with Carrie Thompson. Although he didn't stay with her for long, this relationship revealed his violent tendencies. Carrie told the police about how Paul could switch during an argument and become aggressive, beating the walls and holding Carrie by force. This was just the beginning. In 1999, Jenny Mary Clark appeared in his life. They wasted no time, and just 2 weeks after meeting, the wedding bells were already ringing. However, their marriage began with a real nightmare. On their wedding night, Paul attacked Jenny, and this was not a one-off incident. He continued to beat her and even strangled her into unconsciousness. Investigators claimed that this abusive behavior was repeated with Joanne. Despite this situation, Paul and Jenny decided to have a baby. Their daughter, Chloe, was born in 2000, and they divorced shortly after. When Chloe was 5 years old, Jenny met Joanne and immediately realized that Joanne was too naive for such a rude man and would face a tough battle with Paul. In 2002, he broke up with Jenny and began dating Joanne Nelson. Katie, Joanne's sister, said that Joanne most likely did not know about his criminal history. Otherwise, she would not have continued the relationship or wanted children with him. Their story began on the streets where Paul worked as a security guard in bars and clubs. He was 27 and already experienced in relationships, while Joanne was just starting her journey into adulthood at the age of 19. Despite the age difference, they found support in each other, running away from their parents' control and looking for their own space. At first, they lived with Paul's mother, and then they could afford to buy their own house. But happiness was slowly disappearing, fading away like smoke from a fire. The days turned gray, and the tension grew between them. For Joanne, everything had become too mundane and boring. Their differences began to affect the relationship. She loved order, while he did not give it much thought. On February 14, 2005, Joanne did not come to work. This was unusual and caused immediate concern. As the investigation revealed more and more information, the previously quiet and peaceful town was overtaken by a wave of shocking lies and deception. Joanne Nelson, a cheerful and bright young woman, always put the happiness of her loved ones above her own. As a child, she lived with her parents in the town of Hull, also known as Kingston upon Hull, on the east coast of Yorkshire, England. Her mother, Jean, was a teaching assistant, and her father, Charlie, worked as an engineer for the city council. It was in this town that Joanne grew up and became who she was. Joanne had a bright personality and was successful both academically and socially. She was an active athlete who loved netball, lacrosse, and swimming. She lived happily, enjoying her youth, but always harbored a deep desire to create her own family. She initially tried her hand at medicine, but the emotional toll of being a nurse proved too difficult for her. Her loved ones remember how she would come home saddened by the suffering of her patients. Later, Joanne considered working abroad, but ultimately chose to work at an employment center in Hull to be closer to her family and friends. She found fulfillment in making people's lives better by helping them find jobs and improve their skills. Joanne's dedication and kindness left a lasting impact on those around her, making her absence even more profound and alarming when she did not show up for work that fateful February day. On Valentine's Day 2005, Joanne Nelson vanished without a trace, turning a day meant for love into a day of horror and mystery. Her disappearance was a nightmare for her parents. When her boyfriend reported her missing to the police, a sense of foreboding filled the air. That night turned dark and ominous, leaving Joanne's family and friends enveloped in fear and uncertainty. Instead of enjoying the evening with his beloved, Paul found himself speaking with the police. He claimed that the last time he saw Joanne was when she was asleep, and upon his return from work, she was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving only shadows of fear and hope behind. At 22 years old, Joanne's sudden disappearance caused great distress among her loved ones. The situation became even more perplexing when she missed significant events, such as her best friend's father's funeral and her sister Katie's 19th birthday. The police swiftly launched a large-scale search operation involving numerous law enforcement officers, military personnel, and volunteers. Joanne's father was vocal about his suspicions regarding Paul, questioning how he could be involved in the disappearance of such a responsible young woman. Katie, although aware of her father's concerns, found it hard to believe that Paul had any role in Joanne's vanishing. The family's worry and confusion only deepened as days turned into weeks without any sign of Joanne. Paul threw himself into the search efforts, collaborating with volunteers, concerned relatives, and friends. Despite lacking family consent, he granted multiple interviews to the press, keen to aid in the search. When questioned by a reporter over the phone, Paul vehemently denied any wrongdoing in Joanne's disappearance. He adamantly professed his love for her, asserting that he could never harm her. However, discrepancies emerged between his spoken words and his facial expressions. Expert Cliff Lansley scrutinized Paul's demeanor during a televised interview, identifying peculiarities. Notably, Paul failed to close his eyes while discussing Joanne, an anomaly for someone grappling with grief. Moreover, he displayed no signs of tears, raising suspicions. Further scrutiny came from Ray Higgins, the head of the investigation team at Humberside Police. Higgins reported observing nail marks on the back of Paul's hand, leading authorities to consider his potential involvement in Joanne's disappearance or death. Eventually, Paul's mother, unable to bear the emotional turmoil any longer, divulged crucial information about Paul's actions to the authorities, potentially shedding light on Joanne's fate. Upon learning of the accusations, Paul didn't attempt to refute his culpability. Just 6 days after Joanne's disappearance, he found himself in police custody. During a grueling interrogation, the truth emerged. On that fateful Valentine's Day in 2005, Paul committed the unthinkable act of ending Joanne's life in their own home. Paul recounted a tumultuous argument that escalated to irreparable heights. Joanne's constant criticism, particularly regarding household chores, served as the catalyst. According to Paul, Joanne's request for help with the washing machine triggered his anger and shame at his perceived inadequacy. Matters worsened when Joanne declared her intention to leave him and demanded the sale of their home for €110,000, further fueling Paul's rage. In a fit of fury, Paul confessed to the police, admitting to strangling Joanne with his bare hands. Subsequently, he displayed chilling composure as he meticulously orchestrated the aftermath, intending to conceal his heinous deed. He craftily devised a plan, seeking to fabricate Joanne's sudden disappearance. With calculated precision, Paul proceeded to carry out his scheme. He engaged in casual interactions with neighbors and discussed banal topics like acquiring a pet, all while concealing the darkness within him. Surveillance footage captured his unnervingly composed demeanor as he purchased supplies, a testament to his disturbingly calm facade. Armed with garbage bags, rubber gloves, and disinfectant spray, Paul executed his plan methodically. He bound Joanne's limbs, encased her in bags, and sealed them with duct tape. Then, without hesitation, he transported her lifeless body to her vehicle, his audacity matched only by the magnitude of his crime. The audacious act unfolded in broad daylight, revealing Paul's cunning and deceitful nature. With chilling composure, he concealed his heinous deed from unsuspecting onlookers, demonstrating his ability to manipulate those around him effortlessly. After concealing Joanne's lifeless body in her own vehicle, Paul embarked on a calculated journey. Driving approximately 75 miles to the remote Bradbury woodland near Winteringham in North Yorkshire, Paul carefully orchestrated each step. With meticulous precision, he carried Joanne's body through the dense forest, seeking a secluded burial site among the towering pines. Utilizing twigs to obscure the makeshift grave, Paul buried what he perceived as the love of his life. Returning to the victim's car, Paul resumed his facade of normalcy, showing no remorse or acknowledgement of his monstrous actions. He even fabricated a fake phone conversation with Joanne to divert suspicion, further highlighting his cold-blooded demeanor. Despite his attempts to deceive, Paul's consistent actions betrayed an alarming level of planning and premeditation. In the subsequent investigation, Paul's memory conveniently faltered regarding the exact location of Joanne's burial site. Detectives, led by the tenacious Ray Higgins, embarked on a painstaking 6-week search across 3 counties. Finally, on March 24th, after 39 days of agonizing uncertainty, the grim truth came to light. In a solemn operation led by Detective Phil Gadd, Joanne's remains were discovered in Bransby near York. Trembling with nerves, the search party followed Paul's descriptions until they stumbled upon the telltale signs, a garbage bag concealed beneath branches. Within it lay the heartbreaking evidence: Joanne's body, wrapped in plastic, a tragic confirmation of the family's worst fears. March 24th marked the end of a harrowing ordeal for Joanne's family, bringing closure to their anguished search while cementing the grim reality they had dreaded all along. Paul's facade of strength hid a dark history of sexual violence against women, a chilling truth kept hidden from Joanne's family and the public until the trial. During his time working as a security guard at the club, he ominously referred to himself as a psychopath, sending shivers down the spines of those who knew him. Witnesses familiar with Paul from the gym recounted instances where he instigated fights in clubs and bars, painting a disturbing picture of his character. As the trial unfolded, more unsettling details emerged. It was revealed that Paul had been experimenting with steroids in a misguided attempt to sculpt his physique into that of a bodybuilder. His friends disclosed that he had battled alcoholism in the past, and his violent outbursts were likely exacerbated by his steroid use. Paul's educational background provided little insight into the darkness lurking beneath his seemingly ordinary facade. He attended Sydney Smith School before enrolling at Howe College, where he successfully completed a program in constructional engineering. Despite his academic achievements, Paul's journey took a sinister turn when he pursued a degree in horticulture at Bishop Burton College, completing it at the tender age of 17. These revelations painted a chilling portrait of a man whose outward appearance belied the deep-seated demons lurking within. Paul's transformation from a seemingly ordinary student to a perpetrator of unspeakable violence left Joanne's family and the community reeling, grappling with the horrifying reality of the darkness that dwelled within him. Paul's journey through life took him from Saudi Arabia to Somerton Road, where he worked diligently in various industries alongside his father, Peter Dyson. Together, they navigated the maintenance industry, honed their gardening skills, and delved into the intricacies of machining. Paul's employment history painted a picture of a young man eager to carve out his path in the world of work. However, behind the veneer of normalcy lurked a disturbing truth. At the tender age of 15, Paul's life took a dark turn when he crossed paths with Colin Allen, a martial arts expert with whom he formed an unlikely bond. It was to Colin that Paul confessed to a heinous crime, a confession that ultimately led to his arrest. Paul's acquaintances shed light on his complex character. While some saw him as charming and attractive to women, others witnessed a more troubling side to his personality. He often leveraged his position as a security guard to forge connections with women from higher social echelons, revealing a distorted perception of himself and his interactions. Colleagues and relatives offered contrasting portraits of Paul, depicting him as both outspoken and boastful about his athletic prowess, yet also capable of making disturbing statements. Shockingly, Paul's family recounted instances where he proudly boasted about his father's involvement in the deaths of 2 individuals. This seemingly incredulous claim, however, proved to be rooted in reality. Paul's father, Peter Dyson, had indeed served time in prison for the manslaughter of 22-year-old John Dickinson, a man with whom his wife had been unfaithful. The tragic events of 1967 cast a shadow over Paul's upbringing, exposing him to the grim realities of life and death at a young age. Through Paul's tumultuous journey, a complex and unsettling portrait emerged, revealing the interplay between family history, personal choices, and the darkest depths of human nature. In 1974, a mere 2 days after Paul entered the world, tragedy struck with haunting consequences. Peter Dyson, his father, found himself entangled in a fatal accident. Behind the wheel, he collided with 47-year-old Gordon Kell, who was returning home after jubilantly celebrating a silver wedding anniversary. In a chilling turn of events, Peter fled the scene, leaving Gordon to perish on the roadside. Despite the gravity of the situation, Paul idolized his father, viewing him through a lens of admiration and heroism. The untimely demise of Peter in 2000, succumbing to a heart attack in the midst of their life in Saudi Arabia, left an indelible mark on Paul's psyche. It cast a shadow over his existence, shaping the trajectory of his fate in ways both profound and ominous. As the trial unfolded on November 7, 2005, a hushed courtroom bore witness to a startling revelation. Paul, in a dramatic turn of events, stunned onlookers by entering a guilty plea. Joanne's family, bracing themselves for a protracted and grueling legal battle, found themselves thrust into a realm of disbelief and uncertainty. In a moment of collective astonishment, they whispered affirmations as Paul's admission reverberated through the chamber. Throughout the proceedings, Paul maintained a stoic demeanor, his gaze fixed straight ahead or cast downward, deliberately avoiding the piercing stares of Joanne's grieving loved ones and the scrutiny of law enforcement. Not a flicker of emotion crossed his impassive countenance, not even during the formal announcement of the charges against him. His lawyer, Harry Barrell, stood before the court, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. With unwavering resolve, he conceded that there could be no excuse for the heinous act perpetrated by his client. In the wake of Paul's shocking confession, a pall of solemnity descended upon the courtroom, marking the beginning of a harrowing journey toward justice and closure. On Tuesday, November 8th, nearly 10 months after the tragic murder, Paul received his sentence: life imprisonment with a minimum term of 16 years. Remarkably, just 14 years later, in November 2019, at the age of 45, Paul found himself transferred to an open prison and recommended for day release. The parole board cited Paul's active engagement in self-awareness programs and successful completion of an intensive interpersonal relationship improvement program. Recalling the day of Joanne's disappearance, Katie was struck by Paul's behavior. She now regrets offering him comfort when he appeared at her doorstep. Later, when Paul wandered off, Katie, consumed by worry, searched for him. Finding him at the bus stop, she squeezed his hands in an attempt to provide support as he sat there, overcome with emotion. She even embraced him, hoping to offer solace. Reflecting on the moment, Katie admitted she hadn't initially noticed the scratches on his arm, but upon later reflection, she couldn't forgive herself for missing them. The easing of Paul's detention conditions and the prospect of day release stirred deep emotional turmoil within Joanne's family. Katie, speaking to the media, expressed their sense of loss and confusion in the face of this news. Paul's impending release dredged up painful memories of Joanne's untimely death, leaving the family grappling with a sense of injustice. Despite their belief that Paul didn't deserve such leniency for his heinous actions, on February 5, 2010, at York Crown Court, Harold Landry's trial began under heavy scrutiny. Harold was accused of taking the life of his wife, Lucy Davis. The final hearing, marking a climactic end to this grim saga, took place in early February 2011 at Wolverhampton Court. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Judge David Fett, known for his uncompromising nature, presided over the proceedings. Harold Landry, a 64-year-old man, the center of this legal battle. The prosecutor, Rachel Brand, presented the evidence against Harold, painting a chilling picture of the events leading up to Lucy's tragic death. Brand's cold and precise delivery of facts left little room for doubt about Harold's guilt. Harold Landry had been convicted of murdering his 38-year-old wife, Lucy Davis. Harold, who was supposed to be Lucy's protector, now stood condemned as her murderer. Pete, Harold's friend and lawyer, unable to bear the burden of defending him, passed the case to Andy Childs, an experienced attorney. Childs faced a daunting task: to convince the court that Harold had not intended to kill Lucy, but was driven to uncontrollable aggression. Throughout the trial, Harold was a figure of misery and regret. He wept openly, professing his love for Lucy and expressing deep remorse. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter, hoping to mitigate his sentence. The defense argued that Harold's actions were a result of an irresistible outburst of aggression, provoked by circumstances beyond his control. However, this argument faced fierce opposition. The prosecution presented the court with shocking photographs of Lucy's injuries. The sheer brutality depicted in these images spoke volumes, overshadowing Harold's claims of unintentional harm. Each piece of evidence painted a grimmer picture of Harold's actions on that fateful day. When the final verdict was announced, Harold Landry was sentenced to life in prison. The decision brought a sense of closure to the legal process, but left an indelible mark on all those involved. This tragic case stands as a somber reminder of the fine line between love and violence. It underscores the unpredictable nature of human relationships and the devastating consequences when that line is crossed. Lucy Davis's death serves as a poignant example of how quickly love can turn into a nightmare, leaving a trail of heartache and loss in its wake. Domestic violence can lead to fatal consequences, as it did in 1971 among the picturesque Welsh landscapes. Born in the small town of Pontypridd, Lucy Davis was a charming girl whose childhood was filled with unconditional love and warmth. Roger and Andrea, Lucy's parents, created an atmosphere of happiness and comfort in their home. Together with her younger sister Anna, Lucy grew up in the beautiful village of Glencoe. Lucy took her first steps among majestic mountains and enchanting forests. Her charming smile and kind heart set her apart from other children. She easily won the sympathy of her teachers and peers. Seeing his daughter's passion, her father gave her and her sister the opportunity to immerse themselves in the magical world of horseback riding. Under the strict guidance of experienced instructors, they learned the basics of this noble art, conquering peaks and overcoming obstacles. Lucy and Anna became professional horse riders. Spending her childhood in Wales was a real paradise for Lucy Davis. She blossomed like a beautiful flower there, absorbing the beauty of nature and the love of her family and loved ones. The hobby of horse riding not only gave Lucy and Anna loyal companions, but also served as a real school of life. Horses taught them discipline, self-control, and responsibility. The sisters' talent and perseverance were recognized at prestigious competitions, where they won multiple awards. However, Lucy's world wasn't limited to the riding arena. Her excellent mind and hunger for knowledge motivated her to make new discoveries. Music became another passion of young Lucy. She enthusiastically took flute and piano lessons, honing her skills. Her efforts were not in vain. A year later, she played both instruments perfectly, charming audiences with her talent. Lucy was delighted to join the Glamorgan Youth Orchestra, where her musical journey continued to flourish. Lucy Davis dedicated herself to refining her musical talents, finding an outlet for her love of music and creativity within the school choir. Music wasn't just a pastime for her, it was a profound means of expression. Growing up, Lucy's days were a blend of carefree play and diligent work, instilling in her a strong foundation of dedication and hunger for knowledge, qualities that would shape her future achievements and endear her to those around her. In high school, Lucy crossed paths with Garrett Jenkinson, a fellow Welshman shrouded in mystery. Despite the enigma surrounding Garrett's past, the two formed a close friendship that only deepened over time. Though Garrett harbored romantic feelings for Lucy, he chose to keep them buried deep within himself. Upon graduating in 1998, Lucy was resolute in her pursuit of a musical career and higher education. She secured admission to the University of Yorkshire in Northern England, initially envisioning herself as a future music educator. However, as her ambitions evolved, Lucy found herself drawn to the bustling artistic landscape of a metropolitan city. This newfound aspiration led her to Grimy McAllister, whose worldview and sense of humor resonated deeply with Lucy. Their relationship flourished, prompting Lucy to introduce Grimy to her parents. The initial encounter proved successful, solidifying the bond between Lucy and Grimy and setting the stage for their future together. Roger and Andre recognized him as the ideal life partner for their daughter almost instantly. After careful consideration, Lucy and Grimy made the decision to move in together, forging their own family. Sometime after the move, Lucy proposed the idea of official cohabitation, which Grimy agreed to in 1995. Even while still pursuing their studies in college, they welcomed a son into their lives, whom they named James. Lucy opted to take a break from her own pursuits, to focus on caring for her son, while Grimy diligently continued his studies to provide for their family, taking up night shifts at the city's postal sorting department. Lucy into a whirlwind of challenges, but she faced them with optimism and determination. Despite her deep love for her family, the months spent at home with her child were tinged with loneliness. Rarely did she and her husband find time to be together, and his night shifts only exacerbated the situation. Seeking solace and connection, Lucy created a social media account under the pseudonym Miseria, immersing herself in a virtual community where she could share her experiences and forge new friendships. It was within this online realm that her attention was captured by a user named Harold Landry, a 53-year-old entrepreneur hailing from Louisiana. Rising from humble beginnings, Harold's fervent pursuit of independence and success from a young age propelled him to establish a thriving company manufacturing hydraulic equipment for major oil companies in the southern United States. His hard work not only brought him material wealth, but also garnered him prestige and eventually billionaire status. Conversing with Harold proved to be a revelation for Lucy. His life experiences, unwavering dedication, and boundless generosity left her captivated. However, their relationship faced its share of challenges. The disparity in their ages, social standings, and lifestyles created friction between them. Harold's life seemed extravagant and diverse, filled with eccentric hobbies and lavish acquisitions, including real estate holdings on KML. In Mexico, Harold's marital status was shrouded in mystery. He had been married twice and divorced twice, yet nothing was known about any children from these unions. However, in 1992, Harold's life took a dramatic turn when he divorced his second wife and crossed paths with Geraldine Price. Geraldine, born in 1966 and originally from Mexico, was 20 years his junior and married to Chris Price, with 2 children. Despite her familial ties, Harold managed to capture the heart of this young woman. On February 6, 1994, Harold orchestrated a romantic dinner for Geraldine in New Orleans. They hired a babysitter, Christian Hurton, to tend to their children, allowing them to enjoy an evening devoid of parental responsibilities. As the night drew to a close, Harold escorted his girlfriend home. In a gesture of gratitude, he offered Christian a ride home, to which she accepted. Unbeknownst to Harold, fate had a surprise in store. Chris Price, Geraldine's husband, had been surveilling the couple. Upon witnessing their clandestine affair, Chris resolved not to let the matter slide. He pursued Harold, and when they halted at a red light, Chris unleashed a torrent of accusations. Despite Harold's composed demeanor, the situation escalated. In a fit of rage, Chris dared Harold to shoot him. Without hesitation, Harold brandished his firearm, warning Chris of the consequences. Ignoring the warning, Chris goaded Harold further. In a swift and decisive action, Harold fired, striking Chris in the neck. Miraculously, prompt medical intervention spared Chris's life. In 1997, Harold stood trial in St. Mary Parish courts, charged with the attempted murder of Chris Price. His attorney, Pete Fannin, argued that Harold had been entrapped. Although the jury found Harold guilty of aggravated assault with a weapon, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, following an appeal, Harold was released on parole, having paid a fine and completed community service. Harold found himself forever indebted to Pete for his legal representation and unwavering advocacy, which ultimately secured his freedom. As their friendship blossomed, Harold and Chris reached a settlement agreement, though the exact compensation remained undisclosed. Settling in Covington as a wealthy man, Harold openly shared his past with Lucy, including failed marriages and a troubling incident. Rather than repelling Lucy, Harold's revelations only seemed to deepen her attraction towards him. His gift of persuasion captivated her, and after parting ways with Grimmy, Lucy and Harold decided to embark on a romantic relationship. Eager to shield their love from unnecessary complications, Harold endeavored to avoid any potential troubles. In the early 2000s, he journeyed to England to meet Lucy's parents, Roger and Andre, who, despite initial surprise at the age difference, supported their daughter's choice wholeheartedly, refraining from interference in their relationship. Expressing his devotion through lavish gifts, including expensive jewelry, Harold spared no expense in fulfilling Lucy's desires. His love for her grew so intense that thoughts of marriage lingered constantly in his mind, yet he insisted on perfection before taking the plunge. Seeking to fortify their bond, Harold extended an invitation to Lucy, her son Jameson, and her ex-husband Grimmy for an unforgettable trip to Mexico. To Harold, Mexico wasn't merely a vacation spot. It represented paradise, amplified by the proximity of Pete's apartment, lending an air of comfort to their excursion. Inspired by the purchase of a diamond engagement ring, Harold excitedly shared the news with Pete, who harbored suspicions about Lucy's fidelity due to her frequent rendezvous with Grimmy. Blinded by love, Harold proposed to Lucy, and she accepted his proposal, leading to their marriage in the midst of 2003. Acquiring a $1 million home in Warshire County, their new family life in the neighborhood overflowed with joy. Welcoming Jameson into the family with open arms, Harold treated him as his own, fostering a strong familial bond. Soon after their wedding, their daughter, Hearth, was born, becoming the apple of their eyes. Surrounded by supportive neighbors like Rachel Clark and Stephen Kennedy, Lucy and Harold's familial ties deepened with each passing day. However, as time went on, issues began to arise in their relationship. Harold grew increasingly demanding, expecting Lucy's unwavering obedience. Lucy, who had always been an independent woman, was not prepared to acquiesce to Harold's every demand. Arguments and disagreements became more frequent, casting a shadow over their family life. Their son, Jameson, bore witness to this tense atmosphere, and it negatively impacted his childhood. Even their neighbors began to take note of Lucy and Harold's escalating reliance on alcohol, exacerbating their familial problems. However, when the arguments and shouting ceased, neighbors interpreted it as a sign that the family was attempting to reconcile. In 2009, Lucy found solace in virtual conversations with her old school friend, Garrett, via social media. Sensing his wife's emotional distance, Harold made the difficult decision to leave for Mexico, allowing Lucy space. In his absence, Lucy invited Garrett to visit, blindsiding Harold upon his return. Lucy swiftly filed for divorce, prompting Harold to begin an affair with their neighbor, Rachel Walbin. The divorce proceedings were marred by disputes over property division. Lucy, adamant about keeping the house for the sake of their children, opposed Harold's insistence on selling it. Their disagreements intensified as Lucy revealed unsettling truths about Harold's past, further fueling the acrimony. Amidst the emotional turmoil, Lucy accepted Garrett's invitation to spend time with him in Wales, making no effort to conceal her phone conversations from Harold upon her return. Despite her efforts to salvage their relationship, the constant arguments persisted, and the tension between them became unbearable for Jameson and their daughter, Harth. On the evening of February 1, 2010, as the day drew to a close, Harold, intoxicated from several glasses of wine, was taken aback by the delivery of a package addressed to their neighbor, Stephen Kennedy. It was closer to 9 p.m. when Harold returned from work. Stephen noticed a notification that his parcel had been delivered to Harold. Seeing Harold at home, he approached him to retrieve his package. Harold greeted him warmly and offered him a drink. Stephen, not refusing a glass of wine, agreed, and Harold poured him one. As Stephen entered and greeted Lucy, he observed Harold was already inebriated. After a single glass of wine, Stephen took his parcel and left. Shortly after, a heated argument erupted between the couple regarding furniture for their new house. Jameson, hearing the commotion, rushed into the kitchen to witness Harold striking his mother with a kitchen utensil. Reacting promptly, he dialed the police and comforted his sister Lucy, who was then fleeing the house with the children. Lucy sought refuge at Stephen's house, hoping for assistance. However, en route, Harold caught up with her and viciously attacked her with a knife, stabbing her in the chest. Callously, he dragged her body under a bush and disappeared. Hearing Lucy's screams, Stephen rushed outside and discovered her body. Initially thinking she had fainted, he quickly realized the severity of the situation. Officer Steve C. Fox, arriving at the scene, promptly called for an ambulance and commenced a search for Harold. Despite efforts, Harold evaded capture, leaving behind terrified children who sought shelter until the police arrived. This tragic incident marked the onset of their family's downfall and the start of a grueling journey towards justice. An ambulance promptly arrived and transported Lucy to Yorkshire Hospital, but it was too late. Lucy succumbed to her injuries upon arrival. Meanwhile, consumed by fear and remorse, Harold sought solace at the doorstep of his friend Rachel. With trembling voice, he confessed to committing a heinous act, but withheld the details. In an attempt to atone, he transferred a substantial sum of $40,000 to Rachel, relinquished all his assets, including cash, car keys, and paychecks. After Harold headed home, the police began their search for him. They scoured the streets, interviewed witnesses, but Harold seemed to vanish into thin air. Finally, fortune smiled upon the detectives when Harold was arrested on his way from Rachel's house. His face, distorted by fear and remorse, spoke volumes. Lucy's family, Roger and Andrea, were overwhelmed with grief. In an official press release, they expressed immense sorrow for the loss of their daughter and declined to comment further. The forensic medical examination confirmed Lucy died from multiple stab wounds to the chest. Evidence found at the crime scene and the testimony of Jameson, Lucy's son, who witnessed the tragedy, became pivotal in solving the case. The tale of Harold and Lucy is a love story turned nightmare. Although the trial concluded, the echo of the tragedy will resonate for years to come. Harold Landry, found guilty of Lucy's death, was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 16 years before parole eligibility. He would be 82 years old upon release, but no sentence could bring Lucy back. Roger and Andrea found solace in the fair verdict, though their hearts remained heavy with grief. Harold Landry maintained his innocence, vowing to appeal the verdict, claiming he wouldn't change anything, even knowing the future. The Landry family remained resilient, promising to preserve Lucy's memory by embodying her best qualities for their grandchildren. Despite the irreparable loss, Lucy would forever remain a symbol of light and love in their hearts. Looking ahead, the Landry family embraced hope. Harold received the punishment he deserved, while Lucy's legacy continued to inspire her loved ones. With Lucy's love and light in their hearts, the Landry family found the strength to move forward, carrying her memory with them into the future. The case of Ariel Castro, the monster from Cleveland, and his captives, is a striking example of brutal criminals hiding behind the facade of normalcy. Maniacs like Castro often appear as good, law-abiding citizens, fooling neighbors, friends, colleagues, and even close relatives who are unaware of their double lives. Unlike many, Ariel Castro was never a model family man or worker. He was a tyrant to his wife, who chose to stay silent about her suffering. Thus, people around them sincerely viewed Ariel as a good-natured, friendly, and helpful neighbor. This perception shattered in the spring of 2013, when the world learned about the Cleveland monster, who had kept 3 girls captive in his home for 10 years. The revelation shook the country, particularly shocking the local residents, as the missing girls were from the same neighborhood and trusted Castro enough to accept rides from him. Remarkably, Castro even participated in the search efforts for his victims, becoming a volunteer, yet no one suspected him. Let's delve into how this criminal managed to stay hidden in plain sight, continue kidnapping girls, and evade detection. Ariel Rodriguez Castro was born on July 10, 1960 in Yauco, Puerto Rico, as the third of 4 children in a poor family. His parents, Liliana Rodriguez and Pedro Castro, constantly fought and eventually divorced before Ariel started school, leaving his mother to care for him and his siblings, O'Neill, Pedro, and Bonita. Struggling to make ends meet, the family moved to Reading, Pennsylvania, in southeastern USA. However, they soon moved to the neighboring state of Ohio, finally settling in Cleveland, a city that at the time welcomed migrants from Latin American countries. Pedro Castro also moved to Cleveland with his new wife and their joint children, settling nearby so the children from his first marriage could freely communicate with their father, which Liliana never forbade. Although their father willingly contacted his older children, he never helped them financially. Liliana later remarried, giving Ariel 4 more siblings. Ariel attended Lincoln West High School in Cleveland, graduating in 1978. He studied music and regularly attended church with his family, presenting as a model Christian, but was a domestic tyrant. In his teens, Ariel met a girl named Grimilda Figueroa, whose family lived across the street. They attended the same school, quickly became friends, and later developed a romantic relationship. For a long time, they lived with their parents because they couldn't afford their own place. In the early 1990s, after saving enough money, the couple moved into a house on Seymour Avenue in southwest Cleveland. This 2-story building, erected in 1890 and later reconstructed, had 4 bedrooms, a dining room, 1 bathroom, and a large unfinished basement. According to Grimilda's sister, Alita Caballo, Grimilda complained that her life became a nightmare after moving into the new house. Ariel regularly abused her, both physically and emotionally. Grimilda believed things would improve after marriage and children, but the abuse worsened. She hid bruises and abrasions under her clothes, blaming visible injuries on clumsiness. In 1993, Ariel beat Grimilda so severely that she needed medical attention. Grimilda suffered fractured ribs, a broken nose, and broken arms after being pushed down the stairs by her husband. Despite her severe injuries, she refused to file a police report, and the incident was hushed up. After receiving medical attention, she returned to her abusive husband. Ariel remained quiet for a while, fearing police attention, but soon realized he could get away with it, and continued to beat his wife. In the mid-1990s, he inflicted a head injury that caused a blood clot and an inoperable tumor. Ariel was arrested but released a day later, as Grimilda did not press charges and even requested his release. By the late 1990s, Grimilda, tired of the abuse, filed for divorce, secured custody of their 4 children, Arlene, Antonio, Angie, and Amelia, and moved out. Her nightmare continued as her ex-husband pursued, blackmailed, and threatened her. Grimilda sought a restraining order, which was issued 3 times but revoked each time. She passed away in late April 2012 from complications related to the brain tumor. By then, her children were grown and independent, but maintained a warm relationship with their father. In the early 2000s, Ariel lived alone on Seymour Avenue, worked as a school bus driver, played guitar at city festivals, and was known as a good-natured, hospitable neighbor. Nevertheless, there were oddities in Castro's behavior that went unnoticed. For instance, he was prosecuted several times for traffic violations, including speeding and making dangerous U-turns while driving a school bus. These infractions led to fines and a suspension, culminating in his firing in early 2013 after a maneuver endangered his passengers. Ariel frequently changed musical groups due to tardiness and disrupting rehearsals and concerts. After separating from his wife, he never invited anyone inside his house, though he regularly hosted backyard barbecues. His strangeness did not raise concern. He was seen as eccentric but harmless. No one could have guessed the danger behind his friendly facade. His first victim was Michelle Knight. On August 23, 2002, Ariel decided to kidnap and imprison her. Michelle, born on April 23, 1981, in Cleveland, had a troubled youth, often ran away from home, and had a police record. She became a mother early, but lost custody of her son, who was in a shelter. On that fateful day, she was on her way to court to regain custody of her 2-year-old. Ariel, whom she knew as her neighbor and a school bus driver, offered her a ride. He mentioned having puppies at home and invited her to help find them homes. Trusting him, Michelle agreed, but upon entering his house, the kind man turned into a monster. He severely beat and assaulted her, then chained her in the basement. For days, he starved her, deprived her of water, and repeatedly abused her. She was unable to move and begged for her release, promising silence. When Michelle's mother reported her missing, the police did not prioritize her case. Years later, after the terrible truth came to light, police officers admitted that Michelle Knight's case was not a priority, and limited resources were allocated to the investigation. Firstly, Knight was an adult. Secondly, she had previously left home multiple times. Thirdly, she had legal issues. Most importantly, authorities believed she was avoiding court proceedings related to her son's custody. Michelle's relatives tried to find her through their own efforts, involving neighbors, friends, and anyone concerned. At one point, Ariel Castro even helped post flyers with Michelle's photo around the city, all while she remained a prisoner in his basement. The second victim was Amanda Berry. Castro, convinced he was beyond suspicion, decided to kidnap again in spring 2003. Amanda, born on April 22, 1986, was about to celebrate her 17th birthday, but mysteriously disappeared on April 21, 2003. She was working as a waitress and called home after her shift, promising to be there soon. However, Amanda never arrived, and neither did she appear in the following days, months, or years. As Amanda left the restaurant and headed for the bus stop, Ariel drove up with a seemingly harmless offer of a ride home. Since she had been in the same class as his son for several years, she trusted him and accepted. On the way, he deceived her into entering his house, where he brutally beat her and dragged her to the basement, where Michelle had been held captive for months. Amanda faced the same horrific fate, beaten and starved for several days. This time, he chose 14-year-old Georgina Linda Jesus, who was in the same class as his daughter Arlene and was her best friend. On April 2, 2004, 2 girls walked out of school together, talked for a while, and then each went to their homes. On the corner of West 105th Street, Gina met Ariel, who promised to take her home. She knew him since childhood, was her best friend's father, so without hesitation she got into his car immediately. Even though it was daytime and no one witnessed the kidnapping, the streets were empty. When it became known that Gina was missing, there was no warning to Amber, making her parents angry. The story aired on the Fox television show America's Most Wanted, rerun 2 more times in 2005 and 2006. The disappearance was linked to Amanda's kidnapping a year earlier in September. But Castro remained unsuspected. Despite this, he voluntarily participated in the search for the missing girls. He treated Gina like the other victims, keeping them imprisoned in his home. Although a passerby saw a middle-aged Hispanic man and a sketch resembling Castro was drawn, he was never a suspect. For over 10 years, he regularly beat, abused, and starved his victims to mentally break them down, punishing any disobedience or escape attempts to prevent thoughts of death. Running away. Michelle, the first and oldest victim, suffered the most, undergoing public beatings to intimidate others. Finally, he moved them from the dark basement to a second-floor room with a view of the backyard. Knight recalls that she became pregnant by her abuser at least 5 times during her incarceration. However, each time it became obvious Ariel terminated the pregnancy in the most brutal way. He starved the girl and kicked her in the stomach until she miscarried. After one of these tortures, she almost died due to severe bleeding. But even then, the kidnapper remained indifferent and did not allow calling an ambulance. The girls were allowed to take a shower no more than once a week, and that as a reward for good behavior. Instead of a toilet, they had a garden bucket, which Castro very rarely and reluctantly took out. The criminal fed the captives no more than once a day, but continued to beat and use them regularly. One day he gave the girls a puppy, but a week later he brutally killed the dog in front of them as punishment for Michelle's disobedience. Gina, during the years of confinement, has never been pregnant. But Amanda in 2006 realized that she was expecting a child and with horror imagined how Ariel would beat her to provoke a miscarriage. This time, however, the man was even happy about it, allowed her to carry the baby, and he bought himself an inflatable pool specifically for childbirth. In December 2006, Amanda gave birth to a daughter who was named Jocelyn. The child was born weak but still survived. The appearance of the baby is very close to the girls, who were now immersed in caring for him and a little abstracted from the situation in which they were. In addition, Castro softened considerably after the birth of his daughter and began to pamper the captives with small gifts, and sometimes allowed them to go out with the child for walks in the courtyard, but always under his strict supervision. As Jocelyn grew older, Ariel even sometimes took her to visit her mother, to whom he told her that she was his daughter born out of wedlock. The girl developed appropriately for her age. She articulated herself adeptly, a skill instilled by her mother's tutelage in literacy and numeracy. Outwardly, the child bore the hallmarks of robust health, appearing well-nourished and impeccably groomed. Despite enduring years of captivity, under the unyielding control of their tormentor, the girls clung steadfastly to the flickering flame of hope for freedom. Infrequent attempts at escape were made, though each endeavor exacted a heavy toll upon them. Cruy and Ariel, confident in their ability to preempt their every move, faltered fatally on May 6, 2013. Amanda seized the fleeting chance when an unlocked door beckoned, frantically alerting a passing neighbor by pounding and shrieking at a window. Though initially perplexed, the neighbor's intuition was roused, prompting swift action and summoning law enforcement to the scene. Amanda divulged her identity and unmasked the presence of 2 other captives, Michelle and Gina. After enduring a decade of captivity, all 3 were emancipated and promptly hospitalized. While Amanda and Gina exhibited no discernible health concerns, Michelle bore the heavy burden of severe physical and psychological trauma. Deafness plagued one ear, vision was severely impaired, and a litany of untreated fractures necessitated extensive reconstructive surgery. Furthermore, the scourge of abuse-induced complications left her forever robbed of the chance of motherhood. Suspicions of complicity led to the detention of his siblings, O'Neill and Pedro, both frequent visitors to his domain. In due course, the men found themselves swiftly released. On the other hand, Castro faced a litany of charges, including kidnapping, abuse, assault, forced imprisonment, and the heinous act of terminating 5 unborn lives. While the legal ramifications of these charges could have sentenced him to life behind bars, the prosecution aimed for the ultimate punishment, the death penalty, branding Castro as the Cleveland Monster. However, a surprising twist unfolded as Castro opted to collaborate with the investigation, confessing his guilt and recounting the harrowing events in exchange for a commutation of the death penalty to life imprisonment. In his chilling narratives, he meticulously detailed the days of abduction and the subsequent torment inflicted upon his victims, all the while deflecting responsibility onto the very individuals he subjected to such horrors. August 1, 2013 marked the culmination of legal proceedings, with Castro sentenced to spend the remainder of his days incarcerated without the possibility of parole. Yet, his parting words echoed with a mix of remorse and denial as he tendered an apology to his victims, claiming affliction rather than culpability, and casting blame upon law enforcement for their purported ineptitude in failing to uncover the atrocities transpiring right under their noses. Castro's residence met its end on August 7, 2013, reduced to rubble in a symbolic act of closure. The solemn occasion was attended solely by the kin of Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus, with other participants of the nightmarish ordeal choosing to abstain, unwilling to revisit the site that had served as the backdrop for their unimaginable anguish. Nevertheless, amidst the rubble emerged a glimmer of hope, as on July 9, 2013, Knight, Berry, and DeJesus released a joint video expressing profound gratitude to the public for their unwavering support throughout their journey toward reclaiming their lives. It was their only joint statement after which, despite the years spent together in confinement, the girls chose never to speak to each other again. The maniac was transferred to a correctional center in Orient, Ohio, after his conviction and placed under special supervision. But on September 3, 2013, just a month after he began serving his life sentence, the Cleveland Monster was found hanging from a sheet in his prison cell. All attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. He was 53 years old at the time of his death. Michelle Knight, after her release, preferred to change her name and place of residence. She did not give interviews, but a few years later published a book in which she recounted all the horrors she had experienced in the Castro home. Her child was adopted after his mother disappeared. The woman later tracked down his adoptive parents, but it is not known whether she was able to establish contact with her now adult son. Barry and Jesus received diplomas from John Marshall High School in 2015 because they never had time to graduate. Gina later volunteered on the Amber Alert Committee, and Barry joined Fox affiliate WJW in Cleveland in 2017, where she hosts a missing persons column. Castro family members disowned Ariel, condemned his actions, and apologized to his victims and their families. The perpetrator's eldest daughter, Amelia, is now serving a 25-year prison sentence for assault and attempting to take a man's life. His youngest daughter, Arlene, apologized to former best friend Gina for the way her father treated her. Castro's son, Antonio, said he had been to his father's house and saw that some rooms were locked and inaccessible, but his parent explained it was because he was saving money on heating. In 2018, Michelle published a book titled Life After Darkness: Finding Healing and Happiness After the Cleveland Kidnappings. DeJesus also wrote a book of memoirs titled Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland. There have also been numerous documentary projects and 2 feature films about those horrific events: Prisoners of Cleveland, which was released in 2015, and Kidnapped in Cleveland, which was released in 2021. Ariel Castro's case is one of the most horrifying cases in American criminal history. Castro was convicted of kidnapping, holding, and sexually abusing 3 women for more than a decade in his home. Castro kidnapped Amanda Berry, Gina DeJesus, and Michelle Knight at his home in the Tremont section of Cleveland. He kept them in terrible conditions, imprisoned in small rooms, and subjected to physical and mental torture. Finally, Berry managed to escape captivity by banging on the door and calling for help. She and the baby girl she gave birth to in captivity were rescued, along with DeJesus and Knight. When the police arrived, they discovered the brutal tragedy that Castro had caused. Castro was later arrested and convicted of a series of crimes, including rape, illegal arrest, and unresolved murder. He received a sentence of life in prison plus 1,000 years. However, he committed suicide in prison in September 2013, just 2 months after his arrest. This case caused a stir and sparked special interest in the issue of domestic violence and human rights protection. On the afternoon of June 8, 2018, while navigating the waters near the Long Island Strait, a group of fishermen aboard a commercial vessel stumbled upon an unsettling sight. Bobbing in the waves was the lifeless form of a man. Drawing closer, they discerned unmistakable signs of distress on the body. Waste no time, they promptly alerted the Coast Guard to their grim discovery. Responding swiftly, law enforcement officials arrived at the scene to retrieve the body, revealing a young man with perplexing bruises and abrasions. Identified later as Spencer McFord, his disappearance alongside his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, just days prior, had sent ripples of concern through the community. Ascertaining the circumstances surrounding Spencer's tragic end became paramount, prompting authorities to subject his remains to a thorough examination. The subsequent autopsy yielded the distressing conclusion of drowning as the cause of death. Yet, despite meticulous scrutiny, forensic experts uncovered no evidence of foul play. All injuries were deemed consistent with immersion in water. However, the revelation of Spencer's fate merely deepened the mystery surrounding the series of disappearances that befell the region that fateful weekend. 2 other men met similar tragic ends, their bodies discovered submerged in the waters. Initially dismissed as unfortunate accidents, these incidents raised troubling questions. Amidst the uncertainty, one haunting detail lingered: the absence of Sophia McKenna. Vanished without a trace, her fate intertwined with Spencer's, in a narrative fraught with unanswered queries. This enigmatic saga unfurled on the ominous night of May 27, 2018, in the quaint town of Groan, nestled within Connecticut's northeastern expanse. Revered for its storied history and tales of spectral apparitions, the lighthouse bore witness to a tragedy that transcended mortal understanding. Legend spoke of Ernie, the lighthouse's inaugural keeper, whose love lost drove him to a fatal plunge from its heights. It was to this hallowed ground that Spencer and Sophia ventured, their fates entwined with the mysteries that shrouded the ancient structure. Ever since the rumors began circulating about strange happenings at the lighthouse, both locals and tourists alike have recounted peculiar occurrences. Reports range from doors and windows mysteriously opening to bed sheets slipping off beds without any logical explanation. Sailors have recounted tales of radios switching on autonomously and ships inexplicably becoming unmoored from the shore. These stories have propelled the lighthouse into the spotlight, featuring prominently in numerous television programs dedicated to the paranormal. Despite the speculative nature of these claims, the allure of the lighthouse's enigmatic atmosphere continues to draw people in. Spencer and Sophia were no exception. They had harbored a long-standing desire to explore the mysteries of this iconic landmark. Setting out on the eve of Memorial Day, they embarked on an adventure that would soon take a troubling turn. On Saturday the 27th, Sophia's friend Austin attempted to reach her, only to be met with silence. Initially unconcerned, he assumed she was simply sleeping in. However, as hours passed without any response, worry crept in. Contacting Sophia's mother, Michelle, Austin discovered a string of missed calls from an unfamiliar number on Michelle's phone. Upon attempting to return the calls, they reached Spencer's voicemail instead, sparking further concern. With anxiety mounting, Michelle and Austin sprang into action, scouring the area for any sign of their missing loved ones. Austin called local hospitals, while Michelle wasted no time in filing a missing persons report with the authorities. Meanwhile, Spencer's family shared in their apprehension, noting his absence from a family gathering and his failure to respond to their attempts at communication. Their search led them to Spencer's apartment, but it yielded no clues. Spencer's mother recalled their conversation at 10 p.m., hinting at his intentions to meet Sophia, despite previous plans. As the pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place, the mystery surrounding their disappearance deepened, leaving both families grasping for answers in the darkness. When Spencer bid her goodnight, realizing something had happened, prompting his family to alert the authorities around 6:30 p.m. regarding his and his girlfriend's sudden disappearance. Swiftly, the police initiated their search for the missing duo. Austin reached out to the sheriff, disclosing crucial information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the prior night, admitting his consent for Sophia's visit there. He elaborated on discovering a Snapchat video posted by Sophia, capturing moments aboard a boat en route to the lighthouse. The footage depicted a jovial scene, with Spencer rowing towards the destination. Subsequently, Sophia uploaded the video playfully posing by the lighthouse's concrete barrier, embellished with a "Do Not Cross" sign. The events following this snapshot remain shrouded in mystery. Mere minutes after the upload, at 2:05 a.m., Spencer's phone initiated a series of calls to Michelle, Sophia's mother, persisting at intervals of 2:06, 2:08, and culminating at 2:09. Michelle, deep in slumber, missed all calls, with no voicemails or texts left, and no record of contact with emergency services. The visual evidence confirmed the couple's presence at the lighthouse, prompting the dispatch of 20 Coast Guard units. A coordinated effort ensued, with the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police scouring the area by air, sea, and land. The first significant discovery was Sophia's abandoned car on the university campus, accompanied by her cell phone. Simultaneously, the Coast Guard recovered Spencer's t-shirt, as seen in the video, hinting at its use for securing the boat. The search persisted relentlessly through the night and into the following day. As the storm rolled in, state authorities made the difficult decision to halt the search for the missing young couple, Spencer and Sophia, until new leads or signs surfaced. This announcement sent shockwaves through their families and friends, who refused to give up hope. They took matters into their own hands, plastering the city with posters and spreading the word about Spencer and Sophia's disappearance. Their plea to the public for any information fell largely on deaf ears, despite the bustling streets at the time of their vanishing yielding no witnesses. In the midst of the family's relentless search efforts, questions swirled unanswered. Why did Sophia repeatedly call her mother, and why the hesitation to leave a voicemail or contact the authorities? Speculation ran rampant. Could their disappearance be tied to their recent brush with the law, having stolen a boat and ventured to the forbidden lighthouse? Sophia's prior legal entanglements and Spencer's DUI arrest might have fueled her reluctance to involve the police again. Perhaps she sought solace in reaching out to her mother instead. But the complexities of Sophia's state of mind at the time remain a mystery, clouded by panic and uncertainty. Meanwhile, detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the events of May 26, 2018. The day began like any other, bathed in sunshine and the promise of a festive weekend ahead. Memorial Day celebrations loomed, yet for Sophia and Spencer, the day took a sinister turn. Spencer's work shift ended at 7 p.m., after which their plans dissolved into a haze of uncertainty. Where did they go? Who did they meet? The details are scarce, save for Sophia's car found parked at the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. For reasons unknown, Sophia left her cell phone in the car, whether due to forgetfulness or a drained battery. The couple embarked on their ill-fated journey aboard a small sailboat, its weight a mere 14 pounds, equipped only with oars. With Spencer's confidence in his aquatic abilities bolstering their resolve, they pushed off from shore, navigating perilously close to rocky outcrops, en route to the infamous lighthouse. Their reckless disregard for safety, compounded by the absence of proper equipment, underscored the perilous nature of their venture. Monday evening brought a breakthrough in the search efforts when a police helicopter, scouring the coastline, spotted a white and blue sailboat wedged among the rocks, coated in a film of dust, some 12 kilometers west of the lighthouse. While authorities suspected this vessel to be the missing sailboat from the campus, potentially used by Spencer and Sophia, conclusive evidence remained elusive. Fingerprints discovered on the boat offered tantalizing leads, yet their analysis and subsequent findings remained undisclosed to the public, shrouding the investigation in further ambiguity. Moreover, conflicting reports initially labeled the vessel as a kayak, only to later clarify it as a white sailboat adorned with red markings. In their quest for answers, investigators delved into the backgrounds of Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford. Born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut, Sophia, then 21, resided in Groton, Connecticut, USA. Raised alongside her siblings, Justin and Grace, Sophia cherished her familial bonds, exhibiting a nurturing demeanor toward her younger kin. Despite her tumultuous upbringing, marked by her parents' divorce during her formative years, Sophia remained resilient, her vibrant spirit undimmed by adversity. Yet beneath her outward vivacity lay the lingering shadows of past trauma, shaping her life in profound ways. Throughout her high school years, Sophia grappled with a bipolar disorder diagnosis, leading to periods of depression interspersed with manic episodes. These mood swings, marked by intense shifts between euphoria and melancholy, often clouded her judgment and impacted her behavior. Though she diligently sought treatment, including medication and therapy, managing the symptoms proved challenging. Despite her efforts, there was no definitive cure for bipolar disorder, posing ongoing hurdles for Sophia and her family. The illness significantly disrupted her daily life, manifesting in unpredictable behavior and tumultuous relationships with those around her. In 2015, Sophia crossed paths with Austin, a vibrant individual whose charm captivated her instantly. Their ensuing 3-year relationship, however, proved tumultuous for Sophia and her mother, Michelle. Austin's volatile nature, fueled by his use of anabolic steroids, frequently led to heated arguments and even physical altercations, often initiated by Sophia due to her mental health struggles. Despite discovering Austin's infidelity and ending the relationship, Sophia continued to engage with him sporadically. Despite the challenges she faced, Sophia endeavored to forge ahead. Briefly delving into modeling for a local company provided a financial boost for her education. Eventually, she graduated as a massage therapist and secured a position at the Red Door, an upscale spa within a luxurious hotel. It was there that she met Spencer Mugford, her 20-year-old colleague. Spencer, hailing from Florida, shared Sophia's passion for the sea and boasted a promising future. Despite their mutual interests and undeniable connection, their relationship faced opposition from their respective families due to the frequent turmoil surrounding them. Michelle, Sophia's mother, expressed deep concern for Sophia's well-being due to her frequent meetings with Austin and their regular alcohol consumption, which had become almost daily. Despite Sophia and Spencer deciding to remain friends after their relationship ended, the exact reason remains unclear, though Sophia may have rekindled things with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued spending a lot of time together, both at work and outside, including their last day together. After fishermen discovered Spencer's body following days of searching, his family published an obituary in local media. Sophia's family did the same, but continued searching, holding on to hope. They tried to recall the events leading to the disappearance, but no new information emerged. Uncertainty surrounded any additional calls from Spencer's phone beyond those to Michelle's number, as his phone was never recovered, and the police didn't release cell operator records. Cameras at the lighthouse and campus were reportedly out of order, providing no video recordings of the events. It was also revealed that the lighthouse wasn't checked despite the couple's disappearance. In July 2018, Sophia McKenna's close relatives established a Facebook page titled "Searching for Sophia McKenna" to maintain public awareness of the case. The page facilitated the sharing of information, brochures, and pleas for any relevant details from the public. A peculiar incident occurred weeks after the disappearance, when Michelle received a money request from Sophia's social media account. Given that the police had Sophia's phone, this message raised suspicions of potential hacking. the inquiry into Spencer's demise and Sophia's vanishing reached a standstill. Official findings from the authorities remained inconclusive. Unofficially, various theories regarding the event circulated. Among them, one implicated Austin, Sophia's former beau, suggesting his potential involvement in the disappearance of the young pair. Speculation arose that Austin might have assaulted Sophia, with assistance from his companions in disposing of Spencer. Their turbulent relationship, marked by frequent arguments and physical altercations, became a topic of public discourse. Michelle, Sophia's mother, bore witness to several of their conflicts. A month preceding the disappearance, significant turmoil erupted when Sophia uncovered Austin's infidelity on May 8, 2018, prompting the termination of their relationship. In what could have been an act of retribution or a fresh start, Sophia embarked on a relationship with another individual, bringing him to her residence. Austin, incensed, hurried to her abode, where neighbors observed him vehemently banging and kicking the door, hurling invectives at Sophia. After approximately 15 minutes of silence, assuming Austin had departed, Sophia opened the door, only to find him still there, attempting to force his way in. Fortunately, Sophia managed to swiftly shut the door. Neighbors overheard his threats to harm her if she didn't comply. By then, law enforcement and Michelle had arrived, and Austin was apprehended. The following day, May 9th, a restraining order was put into effect. In her testimony, Sophia recounted prior assaults by Austin and presented photographic evidence of her injuries. She expressed apprehension for her safety due to his stalking. The restraining order prohibited Austin from being in close proximity to Sophia. However, Sophia later experienced remorse, leading to a revision of the restrictions. Now, Austin was only forbidden from entering her residence. The individual accompanying Sophia at the time declined to divulge his identity and initially refused to cooperate with the authorities. Michelle initially asserted it was Spencer with Sophia, but later recanted her statement. Nonetheless, a trusted colleague of Sophia revealed the true identity of her companion. Colleagues of Sophia and Spencer confirmed their romantic involvement, behaving as a couple both at work and in social settings. Witnesses also recounted an incident at a hotel where Austin, Sophia's ex, made a public threat against her. Nevertheless, Austin and his father joined in the search efforts for the missing duo, employing a private helicopter and distributing flyers featuring their images throughout the city. Austin took to social media, proclaiming Sophia as his girlfriend of 3 years, and clarifying that her relationship with Spencer was purely platonic. This focus on their relationship, rather than her disappearance, struck many as peculiar. On July 10th, a memorial in Sophia's honor was arranged by her loved ones. Austin attended the gathering, accompanied by Michelle, and later shared a since-deleted post online. "Rest in peace, baby. We'll meet again soon." According to Austin's account to the authorities, he spent the entirety of May 26th with Sophia, even defying a court order to meet with her, and they had plans for the following day. A friend of Austin reported that around 3 a.m. on the night of the incident, Austin messaged Sophia, claiming to be at the gym with a friend, though the plausibility of this was questioned as gyms are typically closed at that time. Austin's family asserts he was at home before purportedly heading to the gym. An undisclosed witness mentioned Austin and his brother being invited to a party that day. While initially intending to go, Austin later cited fatigue and backed out. These discrepancies cast doubt on Austin's whereabouts during Sophia and Spencer's disappearance, leaving unanswered questions. Described as volatile, possibly exacerbated by alleged steroid use, Austin's acquaintances raised concerns about his temperament. There were speculations of Austin, his brother, and a friend having connections with the local police force. Additionally, rumors circulated about a family member of Austin being married to the police chief overseeing Sophia's case, with allegations of police misconduct against him. However, the credibility of these assertions, provided by a friend of Austin with a criminal history, remains dubious. Following the dissemination of a video on Sophia by a YouTube channel focused on Long Island disappearances, Austin swiftly purged all images of them together from his social media accounts. This action spurred bewilderment, particularly given Sophia's unresolved status. One conjecture posits that Austin sought to sidestep entanglements by showcasing a new romantic interest, although the wholesale eradication of Sophia-related content seemed peculiar. Moreover, Austin's dwindling involvement in the search, mere days after Sophia's vanishing, raised eyebrows. During interactions with investigators, he exuded a demeanor of tranquility, displaying no overt distress over the absence of a close acquaintance. However, such behavior alone does not warrant accusations against Austin, as individuals vary in their responses to stress. One line of thought proposes that Sophia met with foul play to prevent her testimony in a domestic violence case involving Austin. Her absence of testimony ultimately led to the dismissal of the case, mirroring events from the summer of 2018. Notably, Austin is not formally implicated in this speculation. It remains conjectural while the investigation persists. An alternative narrative contemplates the possibility that Sophia and Spencer encountered perilous individuals at the lighthouse. Despite the bustling holiday crowd, witnesses either failed to recall their presence or deemed the information insignificant, resulting in no police reports. Sophia's mother speculated about abduction or human trafficking, though no evidence or ransom demands substantiate these notions. Law enforcement also entertained the scenario of an accident stemming from reckless choices. The young couple embarked on an ill-equipped boat sans life jackets into turbulent currents. Upon reaching the lighthouse, they secured the boat with Spencer's t-shirt, documented their visit, only to realize the boat had drifted away, banking on Spencer's swimming proficiency. Spencer's misjudgment of the water's coldness might have been critical. The obscurity, often altering perceptions of distance, possibly misled him into believing the boat was nearer. Exhausted from his day's labor and the swim to the lighthouse, Spencer faced the peril of drowning. Upon realizing Spencer's absence, Sophia attempted to contact her mother for aid. In a state of desperation, she could have leaped in to rescue Spencer, risking her own life. Despite Sophia's lack of swimming prowess, the influence of alcohol might have driven her to an irrational decision. Another scenario suggests she might have been traversing the lighthouse's narrow ledge, searching for Spencer, only to trip, plummeting with her phone into the water, ultimately succumbing to the current. While these theories persist, they lack official validation and suspects, circulating primarily on social media. Sophia's loved ones persist in their quest for her, yearning for answers. In 2019, an independent detective stumbled upon bones near the shore, promptly alerting the authorities. Regrettably, the bones were dismissed as animal remains upon police inspection, forgoing forensic analysis due to cost constraints. Many facets of the case raise suspicions, warranting a thorough inquiry. The unresolved disappearance of Sophia, a cherished member of a grieving family, demands relentless search efforts. Though bodies of other missing persons have been found in these waters, Sophia's remains elusive. No fresh leads have emerged, leaving the enigma of that fateful night at the lighthouse unresolved.